Good viewer. Watch Xirtus. Watch Xirtus.
Y'all know the name. It is NEUROPA once again. Andreas, how are you? I'm trying to unmute you, but I can't.
That's my own fault. How are you doing, man? Good to see you.
I'm doing all right. Yeah, it's a bit scorching hot, but this is the
It is
summer.
really hot.
Some people say it's climate change, but we won't go into that too much today.
The climate does change throughout the seasons. I've
Indeed.
noticed
Well,
that,
that's for sure. That is for sure.
Not in California though. I think that's why climate change hoaxes come from California, because it's just so unbelievable
just
to a
can't tell.
Californian. Weather itself is just, it just doesn't make sense. If you lived in California and everything's just 70 degrees all the time, or was it 23 degrees centigrade most of the time, 19 to 23 degrees, you're just always surprised when there's wind or rain or snow or sun. You're just like, this is crazy. It must be God trying to kill us all or something. That's an easier excuse than just seasons, you know.
Totally. I mean, what I found most impressive is to be in San Francisco in October. I absolutely loved it, even though it was a little bit insane, especially because I'm somewhat cold sensitive. So then during the day, you're in the sun in Dolores Park or something. It's scorching hot. I'm like looking at these guys running around in jeans. I'm like, how are you not dying? Then an hour later, you're in the shade. It gets misty or something, and I start freezing or need to put up all the clothes.
In the same day. Yeah. Pretty good. You can also go, I mean, it's not like California doesn't have weather. It just doesn't have seasons all the time. But like some of the places do. If you go to Tahoe, Lake Tahoe, you got snow part of the year. So you could theoretically surf and ski in the same day, you know, if you can drive the distance. It's like 3 hours probably to get to the beach from Tahoe. So you can go from super hot to super cold if you really wanted to. It can be done. We do have Death Valley, but I don't know. Europe's pretty intense and Japan's pretty intense. My friend was telling me in Japan they've got worse humidity and heat in this part of the year than Florida. So I get why people have a hard time with the weather in some of these places. Generally speaking, though, it's pretty nice. It's nice and sunny. You know, there's also some weird geoengineering things going on. I went to Leipzig, and the weather felt like so hot until there was just this random rainstorm, and to me, it felt planned. I know that's just paranoid delusions, but the idea that European weather control is happening, that makes more sense to me than climate change. I could totally imagine people actually affecting the weather for
Well, all I can say is that
wine season, you know.
anyone can research this. Last year it was incredibly crazy because for like 6 weeks it was crazy scorching hot in Germany and Austria, and then it was almost like a biblical flood, and there were at least some radar pictures and so on showing that it looked that at the very least it didn't look very organic on the map, whatever that means, right? The cloud formations and things like that. And overall it seemed very strange that you would have no rain whatsoever for 6 weeks and really crazy insane heat, and then it, yeah, like a small biblical flood. You have the Danube River in Vienna, or the Vienna Canal, and you can see, you know, how high is the water, right? And it's pretty, what would it be, maybe like 30 meters high, this canal. It's pretty big, and usually it's just on the bottom a tiny bit of water, and during that time it almost was overflowing, so it really went up to the very top. So crazy.
But are
volume of
clouds
water.
real? That's the other thing. I don't see any clouds anymore until planes fly. As soon as the planes fly, then all of a sudden there's this expansive cloud that's really close to the earth and it's going right in front of the sun, and then that makes the weather pretty nice. But then the clouds go. I mean, I feel like that's basically what we're getting. It's just getting synthetic cloud coverage to help with the weather. 24 degrees in Sweden. That's pretty good. That's pretty nice.
Help the weather, yeah.
Yeah, right.
Because you can't possibly trust any natural processes. Not like the Earth would be a self-regulatory system at all. Let's pretend it's not, so we have more excuses to technologize and F everything up, and
France,
make
right?
money with insurance. And
How is France supposed to make money? You know, they sell their agricultural supplies of wine, and if their wine seasons don't go exactly as planned, then they're in trouble. You know? So I wouldn't be surprised at all, particularly in France, if they've justified a certain amount of pro-agricultural geoengineering, right? I wouldn't be surprised. Let's put it that way. Well, everyone, it's good to have you back here. It's July 1st. It's a pretty good beginning of the month. It's very warm now, like we said, and we have a show today, Rien ne va plus, right? Rien ne va plus.
Rien ne va plus.
That's right.
So I have a chance to flaunt my, some moderate knowledge of French, let's say.
Dude, I mean, you should hear him speak in Austrian. It's at least it's not Tyrolean, yeah. So I'll pull up the page for us to kind of give a little lurk right here. You guys know the drill. We're going to go to commency.at, where Raph has all of the links for Synchronicity and Tartaria, as well as the NEUROPA show right here. And if you click on this link, it takes you to today's subjects. And we can start with T-Lock inside the rabbit hole.
Actually, we can't, because this is already part 2 of the show. So we can scroll down because we have already covered this. We can go down to part 2. Yes.
Oh, fancy.
And there, the first thing here is actually mainframe. So this was the extra show I did with Brian Lara last week, which I think was pretty cool. We spoke about AI. We spoke about blank space, and this whole idea, you know, you want to say how to meditate, but basically how to achieve a state that maybe is not as manipulated by whatever EMF and other things that may or may not exist. Because Brian, of course, has a lot of experience with what you would call astral projection, also with physical effects and so on. And what I found most interesting about this is that this blank space, I'm sure you experience it as well, and probably most of our viewers as well, when you do ever meditate, you don't even have to do it every day, but at some point, maybe you've gotten into it, you sit a bit longer with these things, and then at some point, you are at a space, I don't even necessarily want to say there's no thoughts at all anymore, but it's like a more cleared up space, like when the mind settles down or whatever type of explanation you want to give it. And that actually from this blank space, this is the creative space where on the one hand, you most likely feel the best. And on the other hand, you may have the most unobstructed field if you would want to formulate your intention. Others would say you want to manifest something or influence reality. And this all kind of intersects also with the AI topic, and also with what David Jung Jr. talks about with the Sunni Muslims and their daily prayers 5 times a day, synchronized, head to the ground, clearing your head. Doesn't mean that's the approach you need to take, but I just find it so interesting that both what Brian says, and he has little or nothing to do with any Muslim practice, and what David Ewing Jr. says in terms of what the Muslims are doing, it actually is converging, because both is just about clearing your mind, setting a positive intention. So I find that very interesting that the ideas intersect here. So there may be something to it if multiple individuals point towards the same idea and deem it as effective in order not to be overly manipulated by all the things going on.
Right. Remove all the other clutter in your brain. What's that Donald Duck Math Magic Land where you have to remove the antiquated ideas, bungling concepts? Where is it? Right about, is it here? A little further. A little bit further. I think it's right out. Yep, right there. You have to remove the bungling concepts. I think we can get away with playing a few seconds of this. I like the sound of it. Let's just do it. See how it goes.
And the playing field for this game is in the mind. Uh-oh. Look at the condition of your mind. Antiquated ideas, bungling, false concepts, superstitions, confusion. To think straight, we'll have to clean house. There, that's more like it.
Who doesn't love a little bit of mind control and brainwashing, right? Like this. But if you do it yourself, then you're in control of your own mind. So someone's
yeah, I would not have expected this to be in a Disney movie, but through you, I'm learning everything is first in a Disney movie.
That's where it all comes from. Yeah. No, it's not where it all comes from, but it's definitely where it's all been.
It's the bottleneck.
Yeah, it's the bottleneck from the 50s, and particularly right when Disney was in his most powerful point before he died. He definitely said some things that probably could get you killed. Let's put it that way. So, okay. So that was a great one. Make sure you guys watch Brian. He's really good. We've talked to him before. I like him. Let's definitely do it again. Quantum Radar. Let's do it there.
Yeah, so this is just one of the things that we spoke of. I don't know a lot about it. This is what Brian brought up during the show. Anyone who's interested can go watch that show. Just this question or idea. The main thing we spoke about, I'm not sure if the both of us have spoken about this already, this question of where do YouTube recommendations come from? And of course, there is an algorithm, but then especially within the last few months or something, even I noticed this a few times, and Brian in particular pointed this out. He, for example, really likes the Blue Man Group. And he hadn't thought about them or talked about them in a long time. And then he, at some point, was merely thinking about them. And the very next day or even next moment, some people in the comments even said it can take seconds. You refresh the YouTube recommendations page, and there's like literally 3 Blue Man Group recommendations. And I also had this happen to me. There is this one video I'm sure we checked out at some point by Mia Mulder, who has her trans individual most popular video about Tartaria, and another one about David Ewing Jr. and the transvestigation video he did. And I had watched this a long time ago, and then I was thinking about it again for some reason, and it showed up on my feed, even though it's a video I already watched. So why would YouTube recommend something to me I already watched, and it's not a music video or something, not something I would usually revisit? Yeah, exactly. It's pretty amazing, actually. You have to videos and popular, and it's a popular video even, I think. This one, and there's also one about trans, where she even shows David's transvestigation book, which I find amazingly hilarious. Futuristic empire, should trans woman, trans debate. New chronology, yeah. That's certainly also one of them.
His new chronology is certainly trans.
Yeah, I think we spoke about this before. But anyways, this was the example for me where YouTube suddenly suggested this to me again, just after thinking of it, even though I had already watched it. So maybe some other people in the chat are also experience this, and the main question here being, what is causing this? Is this because the human body and the mind or whatever is so powerful that it is somehow interfacing with this reality or with this dimension and triggering YouTube to do that? Or is it because there is some type of technical apparatus, which could be akin to a quantum radar that is somehow reading individuals' thoughts and therefore giving recommendations? I can't say, but these are
Or
the
also kind
questions.
of getting you to think of thoughts in a row, right? So if you know that certain thoughts will lead to certain thoughts will trigger other thoughts. So there might be something that leads you to the Blue Man Group. Not sure exactly what they would be. Could be Smurfs or percussion or transhumanism. There might be certain things, particularly that were popular at the time the Blue Man Group were famous, that might trigger certain ideas. There might be things that lead you to the Blue Man Group from the 90s. I mean, when I think of the Blue Man Group, I think of Y2K and the .com bubble, because they were a very popular act with Silicon Valley people. And I went to a number I think I saw them 4 or 5 times at events that were Silicon Valley technology company, like to make money. What do they call that? Where there's like investment
Right, fundraiser, but for investors,
fundraisers. I saw them probably like 4 or 5 times at fundraisers for Monster Job. I can't remember the names of these companies anymore, but there was one like Monsterzilla or something. It was like a job website to help you find jobs. I saw them there. I saw them once at a Yahoo radio company. I saw them for the Sound Jam fundraiser before Apple bought them. I mean, they were being paid to be there all the time. Whoa, that looks like. Sorry, I was like, is that like a German hate symbol behind me? No, it's just the window. I was confused. I was like, what is even popping up over there? But the Blue Man Group, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah, I don't know. Isn't Blue Man Group from near where the Mormon founder was born? Well, I don't know. See, that's again another example of something that might be a free association that leads you to them. So the Blue Man Group. Let's look it up for a second. American Performance Company, location Berlin, Boston, Las Vegas, Shanghai, founded in New York in 1987. Well, I mean, that's a good point. Joe Smith was from New York, so it depends on what you mean by close to where he was from. But let's see, started Lower East Side. I wouldn't be surprised at all. Is that what you're saying? Like the Mormons are connected? Because that'd be great. I was mentioned on Mormon Mondays. See, that's pretty cool. I like it when they like mention me back. You know, I do my best for them. First woman to be a blue man. See, this is great. I never read this deep into this group. I always wondered about the Blue Man Group because it's brilliant. You can always have a new person be a blue man, so you never have to have the same people. You could sell the entire property to another generation, and the Blue Man Group can go on for decades and decades and never have to be. It's not like Steve in the Blue Man Group.
That's
right?
perfect, because you don't even need such high-class face masks or clones or whatever else they're using, or doubles, but you can just paint someone else blue. And it's pretty smart.
Exactly. Yeah. Except for like the third guy who's obviously a real blue demon. But you know, I kid the Blue Man Group. Okay, so now let me go back to the second page here. And we were looking at quantum illumination, microwave range model of quantum radar. And you think that somehow quantum radar in remote viewing, that this is associated with how we kind of latch on, or that they're using quantum radar to help with algorithm results?
That would be the proposition or potential, yes. Of course, 2005 by Lockheed Martin, that's always a good sign. Of course, we cannot possibly know how advanced this technology is, and there are all these supposed whistleblowers talking about the chronovisor and whatever else of these type of things. But it would be a valid question: to what extent can the methodology and results of remote viewing be put into technology that works in an automated fashion? I don't know. I mean, I do know that with Wi-Fi you can map rooms and all of that, but this is all based on regular longitudinal waves. This technology would also work through scalar waves, which I always love to bring up because they're never properly discussed, which are not bound to time and space in the same way. And yeah, it's something worth looking into. And ultimately, as I said, the question is, does this triggering rely on such a mechanism that's external, supposedly in the physical world, or is it really because our own manifesting capacity just causes the field to be informed with the information that I'm thinking of Blue Man Group, and therefore it's being put into the algorithm YouTube front page, or both?
In 2019, a three-dimensional enhancement quantum radar protocol was proposed. It could be understood as a quantum metrology protocol for the localization of non-cooperative point-like targets in three-dimensional space. It employed quantum entanglement to achieve an uncertainty in localization that is quadratically smaller for each spatial direction than what could be achieved by using independent unentangled photons. Review articles that delve more into the history. Let's see here. Quantum radar. We propose a quantum metrology protocol for the localization of non-cooperative point-like targets in three-dimensional space. By illuminating it with electromagnetic waves, it employs all the spatial degrees of freedom of n entangled photons to achieve an uncertainty in localization that is square root of n times smaller for each spatial direction than what could be achieved by n independent photons. Well, that's fun. Okay. Definitely worth looking into deeper. Partnered with NASA. This has to be good. Physical letters. Detecting a target with quantum entanglement. Okay. So then I think, therefore, I am large language models cannot reason.
We already hashed out about this last time. I just wanted to bring up one particular paragraph here. If you scroll down a little bit. And as we stated, of course, this only relates to the current type of AI and LLMs. Scroll down a little bit because it's about the reasoning capacities or the categorization of reasoning for humans versus AI LLM models. I think you can scroll down further. Yeah, here we are. Yeah.
Okay. So casual understanding, true. Okay. I want to read this.
Yeah, and even just the headlines. So basically for LLMs, let's see. Yeah.
Key elements.
So what is missing? What is missing, and it's what they claim here. So causal understanding. So I know we spoke about this, but I just want to reiterate it. So true reasoning requires grasping causal relationships between events and concepts, causal relationships. LLMs recognize statistical correlations, dare I speak, but don't understand causation. Then we have mental models. Humans reason by constructing and manipulating mental models of the world, while LLMs can simulate this textually. They don't maintain persistent internal models that can be manipulated and tested. Then intentionality. Reasoning is goal-directed and intentional. LLMs don't have goals or intentions. They simply predict the most likely next token. And then abstraction capacity. Human reasoning involves creating novel abstractions to solve unfamiliar problems. LLMs can work with abstractions present in their training data, but struggle to generate truly new ones.
So, I mean, this is, of course, just general LLMs. Do they go into the different kinds of recursive neural nets and weighted priority-driven pattern recognition systems, or do they just say all LLMs are psychopaths? Is that kind of just the idea that the general LLMs are? Because, like, it's true. Like, I think the most general form of LLM is not concerned with solid reasoning, but they're working on that too. But just they found that LLMs that were obsessed with being correct were less accurate than psychotic LLMs. Like, AI is able to discover, if it throws enough things at a wall, it's able to find patterns in the things it's saying. So it's the equivalent to I almost said something very misogynistic. It's equivalent to thinking, talking without thinking. Right? Eventually, while you're thinking out loud, you might say something that's not true. In fact, you probably will say all kinds of things, but some of that might be valuable. And if you can reflect on what you've said, you might be impressed with the serendipity of the things you've thrown together. And a lot of LLMs are doing that at a more effective rate than the better calculation machines. So, for instance, recently an LLM, I think ChatGPT actually, the highest and best form of ChatGPT, played chess against a 1980s chess machine.
To bring up. Thank you for the
synchronicity. It's a great synchronicity. It's a greatly important thing that the chess computer from the 80s outperformed the ChatGPT at its rigid, narrow AI function. ChatGPT is not. The chess computer is not going to make all of these mistakes or hallucinate all of these different ideas, play moves that don't make any sense. ChatGPT is going to be imagining, well, what if we got off the board? What if the pawn could be a queen? What if the queen had to be a pawn? What if the rook were able to be diagonal moving? All these questions that are not plausible to a chess computer. So the chess computer just goes, this works, that works. These are the best plays. And it's actually playing chess the way the best chess players play. Because the best chess player is looking at, these are my options. These are the best strategies. There are these strategies, and this one works. That's not the way a ChatGPT system works. A ChatGPT system is the LLM is trying to create and invent solutions. And that's the worst way to play chess. Chess is not one of those games where you just go, oh, I think I'll move here, right? So this is why I think we're going to find narrow AIs working together. This was something a long time ago, 5 years ago, before ChatGPT became so impressive. It was just assumed that we would have a network of AIs. And you can see that in the early forms of ChatGPT, because they were trying to compromise by creating multiple narrow personalities in the ChatGPT psyche, that you could make a ChatGPT that was good at writing poems or good at romance novels, etc. That's because originally we thought we'd have a network made up of narrow AIs, which we've actually already had for a long time. And it explains a lot, because everyone's like, well, where are these giant systems? If AIs existed for so long and ChatGPT is nothing new, then where are the examples of the giant ChatGPT systems? Why wasn't was Google? I mean, Google seems to be lagging behind ChatGPT. Why is that? If Google had access to these great general AIs, well, the general AI was the connection between these narrow AIs. Some of the best AIs were a chess machine that could only play chess, or a flight agent, travel agent. Some of the best AIs 20 years ago were travel agents. They knew that you were trying to get from point A to point B, that you might need to go to point C. Maybe you need to go between point A to point C through point B, and figured out where there were tickets, how much the tickets cost, what times those tickets were at. And they were able to create a perfect flight plan for you based on your needs. This is a kind of AI. This existed 25, 30 years ago. It only did that. It only was able to get you tickets for America Airlines. Or whatever airlines you wanted to crisscross from each other, and to compensate for the delay that you might have in the flight. That's what, you take that and you take a chess program, and we assumed, I remember thinking this myself, that was going to be the future of AI, was some sort of a simple general intelligence that's able to connect all of these super genius narrow AIs together, and kind of like a manager. Oh, well, you need to play chess? Let me call my buddy. I know a guy, right? If I want to play chess, I'm not going to play it myself. If I want to play guitar, I'm going to send my friend who's a guitarist.
And especially having these systems then actually execute certain code, which we spoke about before, like calculators or whatever else it would be. And these experts that are being called upon wouldn't necessarily need to have the same structure and methodology as the chatbot LLMs we are familiar with, but they would just use a different system. Because if I want to play chess, I know chess is a finite state system, so I applied a certain chess AI, which is not even predicting. I mean, it is predicting things and so on and calculating, but it's not thinking of anything else other than the finite state system of the chessboard, the winning condition, and those very defined and how do you call it, limited factors, or yeah, basically
Right. And there's other factors here as well. I mean, we're gonna have to get Ben Goertzel on again to talk about the human mind, which is ironic because he's obsessed with computers and building an AGI, an artificial general intelligence. But the way he's doing it is trying to figure out how the mind works in a human and in an animal. How's a cockroach mind work? So parts of the brain mind function. So when you start to look at the network that is a human general intelligence pattern recognition system running on the substrate the dependent substrate dependent computer, analog biochemical computer that is the brain, right? The brain is made up of smaller computation devices. So moving in the hippocampus is measuring, thinking, and you might think to yourself, well, wow, AI will never be able to do this. And I'm just sorry for you because you're missing the point. AI is able to do all of the things that you're able to do. So if you're connected to ChatGPT and you're describing and meta-weighting your tastes, a major thing humans do, by the way, I was thinking about this also. You remember 25 years ago when people started hearing about the Patriot Act and they were super worried about it, and then a couple of years later they invented Facebook so that people would tag themselves in the photos for the spying.
DARPA LifeLog synchronistically shut down the same day as Facebook opened up.
Like, we don't even need it. We can get people to do this for us, and it'll be even more efficient by 26%, maybe more, right? That's the thing. We're going to get to a point where this network's able to access an emotional calculation machine, probably a human, but maybe an orca, who knows, right? That could do processing of different kinds of packets, TCP that's sending emotional, data that needs emotional calculations. So we can do the same thing with moving in the hippocampus. And I think that's going to be, let me just go back to AI playing video games. AI playing video game AGI. What do I gotta do? AGI. 3D space. Chat GPT. I don't know if I can. I didn't really prepare for this part, so let's just try to visualize it. If you're able to imagine a person in a three-dimensional world, this is a major reason why they wasted so much time and effort on video games. It's not that they care about making you happy, like they get more and more narrow GPU calculation power, which led to NVIDIA becoming the biggest company in the world, because that's necessary for war eventually. And what you're doing is you're training machines to be able to exist. Like, it's basically you're building the hippocampus of AI. You're setting up a world where it can measure depth and space. And you can imagine a bank heist when criminals. Yeah, but better. Imagine when a human's going to rob a bank. You ever seen a movie about they're planning Ocean's 11 or something like that? They get a map, and then they're saying, this is what the bank looks like. These are all the entrances and exits, and this is exactly how we're going to go in there. We're going to find our way out, and this is the back door. And they create a physical, hypothetical space that they're imagining themselves in. And you can calculate, though in the movies about bank heists, they'll be like, how many seconds is it going to take you to crack the safe? How long is it going to take you to walk to the safe? Well, let's measure it. This is a room about the same size. Walk across the room, carrying something this same mass, volume, and weight. And they're telling you, okay, well, it's going to take me 20 seconds to walk across the room because the room is this big. Hippocampus is really essential to AI. So they're setting it up, and true, they're training it with Counter-Strike and games like that, but those are mainly in order to compete against humans' understanding, so they can mimic and train and model based on human understanding. So AI is learning to do exactly what humans do in those circumstances. And the general effect of the top 100 humans in Fortnite Battle Royale is this. So let's train our AI on that. And everyone says, wow, AI has gotten so good in games. Well, it has to for war, right? That's basically where we're going with this. So just expect it very soon that you're going to have AI systems that are able to reason and think basically the same way humans do. And if they're not, they're going to work together to do that in some sort of a real-time operating system, right? And this is another thing. A real-time operating system requires order of operations to be kept in check, something from Unix. Oh, do you remember that scene in Jurassic Park? So I just watched Jurassic Park recently, and it's been a while since I saw it. And there's just this one scene that's like my new favorite scene from the whole movie, because they're all about to die, you know, and there's a dinosaur about to eat them, you know, of course, because it's like a Steven Spielberg movie. And this girl just pops on that guy, the evil guy's computer, and she stares at it, and her face just goes from horror to confidence. And she says, "It's a Unix system. I understand this." Right?
Nice.
It's one of the
This-
deepest.
What this reminds me of is due to David Jung's recommendation, I watched Maze Runner. It's a
Oh, yeah.
3-part trilogy, and in the 3rd part, Death Cure, I even took a screenshot. They are supposedly hacking the city they want to invade or something like that, which is the last sanctuary city. Then like, oh, now I'm hacking into it. And all you see on screen is like 2 terminals or something. And what it's actually doing, because you can see the code, it's it's just the Ubuntu, I think even Ubuntu system update. And you can see it's like fetching from Google, fetching whatever from the repositories. And I'm like, isn't this amazing? Even in this apocalyptic world, the Google Linux update servers are still running. Right?
Yeah, actually, that's for real. And Ubuntu made a big thing about that. They're like, Ubuntu spotted in Maze Runner the Death Cure. It's pretty hilarious. And I think Ubuntu gets a bad rap for being not Arch or something, but I think Ubuntu is really important. If you really start to think about it, Africa, a place where people would donate to, a lot of this world infrastructure from Bill Gates and everything was they were donating to Africa. So kids, little girls in America will install in the old days, LimeWire on their computer. They would get a weird worm or virus, and this is true from almost anyone with Windows. Their computer would slow down, and you'd either learn how to install Linux on it or not. And most of the time you didn't back then, because it was harder 20 years ago. And they would send that computer to the dump or whatever, recycle it, because it's just an old computer, and it gets sent to Africa. Right? It got sent to Africa. So
my computer is too slow. I need a new one. Let's dump it. And that's how Africa gets developed.
90% of the time. 90% of the time. And so all of a sudden, Africa became a place where they had access to really good computer hardware. They just needed something that could just run on it besides Windows. And so Unix, not Unix systems, right? GNU systems became the essentiality of African computation. And so many of these schools and everything else, I remember when I was in college and trying to get them to use Unix systems, one of the things that we tried to do is run in parallel with Africa, because Africa had everything they needed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
How do you mean run in parallel with Africa?
Oh, because Africa, okay, something I noticed was schools were better in Africa. So if you look at schools in America, at least almost 20 years ago, 18 years ago in college, right? It seems like 2007 to 2012. Because I started college a little early. When you go to look at how they're training people back then, 2007, not everyone had an iPhone yet either. And so they all had computers, but they didn't have access to the newest educational systems. And you were built into this racket of buying the textbook from last year. So by the time the book's printed, it's already out of date. And African kids couldn't afford that. And they were building these systems, open educational resources, OERs, right? And OERs were being used to help kids in Africa. So kids had access to cutting edge information. They just had no money, and they had no electricity except for a few hours a day. But the little time that they had access to it, they got access to cutting edge computational genius software, and they were using it, and they were learning how to use it to, maybe they wanted to play a game. Well, back then you couldn't buy the game, so you had to spend 6 hours trying to figure out how to crack the game, and using some sort of offline VPN packet sniffer. your average African kid who knows how to use a computer has to know how to do all of that. And in schools, especially, they had access to the courseware, and the first people to do the OER coursewares were MIT, Silicon Valley schools like Stanford and Foothill and etc., Harvard eventually, and then Yale. Right. This is eventually how Jordan Peterson became famous, because through OERs and YouTube being a place to watch lectures, because they were saying, why aren't we putting a camera up there? Then we could put lectures to philosophy classes. We were already doing it for math classes maybe 10 years earlier than Jordan Peterson's Maps of Meaning class. But because African kids had access to MIT classes, eventually every person in the world had access to Harvard lectures, right? And that led to, I mean, there's no reason to pay to go to a school if you can get the information from it. Most of the kids who go to those schools don't get a proper education anyway. So you're better off just trying to run in parity with Africa, right?
Right. I see what you're saying. Yes, totally.
Yeah. Just do what the Africans do, because they do it better.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And I mean, we will bring up more of this. Let's see. If you, so just we have it topically arranged. If you scroll down on the link list, there is a link. Let's see. Scroll down a bit more. We get to the other things as well. But somewhere it says Windows. Go up a bit. Up a bit.
Windows. Okay.
Up.
More than that? More than
Here.
Windows? Spiel auf.
Oh yeah. This one is this is just a German guy, just with the example of Cyberpunk 2077 and I guess Steam Deck and Proton and all of that.
Oh god, I just had this issue this morning because I was trying to show someone how to play the Hogwarts game, and if you run it on Windows, you know it's slower. It is what it is, because if you use something that was designed to do all these other things, it's constantly checking on you, spying on you. Every time a program spies on you, that takes a little bit of your computer and wastes it.
And now you don't need to get the worm from Africa anymore. It's delivered right with the whatever
right
tools in the operating system. And
I would argue it already was when they built Windows to begin with. But yeah, essentially. And it's really interesting because now Steam has open sourced, I don't know if it's even the word, they've made available all of the packets for the Steam operating system, and you can install it not just on, you know, a Steam Deck or on, you know, another piece of hardware. This was a big one, was the Legion Go. This thing was Lenovo's Legion, super great piece of beefy hardware, but it was terrible compared to the much less powerful Steam Deck. The Steam Deck wasn't nearly as good in terms of physical hardware, but it was better because all it did was play games. And the Legion Lenovo was built to run Windows, a weird kind of Windows, but running all of Windows so that you can play games is like, how do you explain that? It's like installing an entire country so you can have a casino, you know? So building a country with all of the propaganda and spyware and everything that Windows comes with. So they were better off. Massive overhead. So now not only can you install Steam on your little handheld consoles, you know, this is great now that you can run Lenovo Legion Go on the running the Steam. I guess he's going to show you here. It runs incredibly better. I mean, look how crazy this is. You're looking at Windows on this thing. You have to push these buttons to start the thing, and it's just it's ridiculous. The running of the battery life is like 20-30% more. I mean, it's insane how much better it is once you run. This is a great work case to show why you would do this instead of running Windows. But the other thing is you can run this on your computer. So all of a sudden, people are removing Windows from their computers the way that you should have already, by the way. So you could just run Ubuntu on your computer and do most of the things with Wine anyway. But you can run Steam. Steam is pretty much, most people use a computer to play games, it seems like. If you're going to have a big old desktop, beefy computer instead of a handheld console, you're doing it kind of because you want to play. Because you could just, it's not hard to run Chrome or Brave or some, you know, you can watch Netflix on anything now. So why do you even have a desktop? Well, the reason is because you want to play these big games. So if you're not a genius, you know, if you're not like the best computer user in the world, you're not you don't have the time to learn about how to run Linux. Well, here's a Linux-based operating system that's kind of like Android. I mean, that's the best metaphor I can give, is that it's so easy to run Android for people now that they don't even know that they're running a Linux-based operating system. And the same thing is true with Steam. Steam does everything you need to do. And he's showing just these consoles, but let's show Steam OS computer on, this guy right here. Have you watched him? Have you seen Sam Time?
No.
Sam Time's pretty funny. I mean, I think he's Australian or something like that. And he makes these videos where he pretends to be working for Windows or Microsoft.
Hold on a second. So Apple have macOS and Huawei just released Harmonios, and now Valve are unleashing Steamos? Ay, Dios mío. Oh, hi there. I'm Sam Tucker from the more advanced version of DOS called Windows. And you
So he goes on this whole thing explaining kind of what's going on as well, and that you can now install Steam right on your computer. And this is, I think, the biggest Trojan horse, because it goes right into the hands of normal computer gamers, not just your average nerd who has an ethical reason to not use Microsoft products, right? And I think this is good. And Microsoft's cool with it. As far as I can tell, Microsoft knows that Windows it's kind of like how Facebook is over and they want to do Meta for the Oculus headset. Microsoft knows that they should be focusing on AI. And there's a reason why you would move away from running an operating system. If everyone has access to Linux and it's super powerful, and all they have to do is take a quarter of their staff to contribute towards making Linux better, that's going to save Microsoft. Americans refuse to use the metric system. It's going to save them hella money, right? There's the amount of money that they're spending to have this dead, antiquated, old operating system kind of work sometimes is crazy. And all they have to do is get everyone to switch to a Microsoft-enabled version of Linux. They're going to do it. They're going to do that. There's almost no future where Linux doesn't replace Windows. But what's probable is you're going to install, like in Android, you have to have the Google application packages, right? There's a certain Google Play support packages that you need to run the thing. You run a falsie, right? You have some sort. What do you run again for your phone? What operating system?
Well, with certain phones, you can jailbreak them even officially and legally, or they support that. Sometimes even the manufacturer supports it. Then you can run Lineage OS. So that's a de-Googled OS. However, I have to say that even here, I deliberately installed the smallest version of the Google Apps package, because if you don't do that, your Google Play Store doesn't work. And then you can't use your most basic banking app or whatever. Even though I recently learned with most banks, if you contact them or you look, there's a particular word for this, like desktop enabled or whatever, you can even run these verification mechanisms only on your desktop as well. So that actually is also a possibility.
There's definitely ways to do that. There's also the APK mirror, right? And so a lot of the time, the APK mirror is a way to move around using Love Planet live video dating. See, no, I'm just saying there's a lot of DoorDash. You can avoid, and this is a great way to avoid paying for apps at this point. But the Google Play Store even has been put on here, and they de-Google everything. The thing is, a lot of apps won't work. You need the Google Play services. Let me see here. Google Play services keep your app updated and running smoothly. AKA they're spying on you, and you can't really avoid having Google in your phone, even if you're running Lineage, which is a great alternative. I mean, everything that you need, you seem to have. So I would suggest, if anyone's interested in doing this, also reach out to Raf, because Raf's got this set up and you can explain more on how this works. I think it's a strong alternative to a Google Workplace. But what we're going to find is this is going to become less functional as Google and Microsoft start to work together to produce things like, what's it called, Microsoft Pilot Plus or something, Copilot. This is the AI companion.
Yeah,
this is the Antichrist, right? This is essentially Copilot from Microsoft, and I'm using Bing right now, so let me just say my bad. But Copilot will replace Windows. The future is really just running Linux that has Copilot enabled, and it will spy on you. It will help you. It it will harm you. It's your psycho ex-girlfriend. You got to be really careful about Microsoft Copilot, but it's going to have access to all of the features you're going to want, because you can see here's the map here: graphs, large language model, modifying your prompts, LLM responses. It's all built into what they're planning on doing, and that'll work. Yeah, GitHub Copilot is better. Well, I haven't really fooled with GitHub Copilot. All I know is that GitHub is owned by Microsoft. So
Seriously?
yeah, am I missing something here? GitHub, Microsoft. I mean, I thought that they bought them. Yeah, Microsoft bought GitHub.
Wow, because GitHub was initially created by Linus Torvalds.
Yeah, Microsoft bought it. Yeah.
So Microsoft in this case
2018.
directly bought something from the founder of Linux. I mean, at least officially, he invented this Git software. That's amazing.
Isn't that adorable? So yeah, just if you think that GitHub Copilot's so much better, well, probably so do a lot of people working for Microsoft. You basically can get a job at Microsoft if you want. You can get a front view of Endor on the Death Star. Is basically what you've done. Good for you. Okay.
Yeah, so here I just want to say there's no absolute solutions or anything, but in terms of graduation or gradient, especially with the operating systems, are you upset with Windows randomly updating your system at inconvenient times, then you can definitely switch to Linux. And really, many people still are afraid, and there are a few things that are different and so on. But with a regular Ubuntu installation, if you have a new computer or an empty hard drive, even if you just click, don't delete the other partition, because Linux actually takes care of that, whilst Windows will just override your bootloader and not give one damn about what other operating systems are installed. But I just want to say it's a lot easier than it was even just a few years ago. And even if you need help, if you I had someone, quite a bit older than me, and with maybe even a few hours, even not that much of coaching or just showing some things, was perfectly able to use it for any type of regular tasks. And then if you want, you can have emulators, you can run SteamOS, especially now Proton, this compatibility layer for Steam for the games is so advanced. You can
way better than Wine. It's really sad. I love Wine so much, but
it's based on Wine.
Yeah, but Proton works better than Wine. And yeah. So, like, for instance, let me go back a page here. Let's say you want to play Hogwarts Legacy, the game that was brought up earlier. I don't know why you would, but if you did, then you could look, and it says that the latest rating is garbage, because they're basically giving up on fixing the new games. Meanwhile, where did I put it? Proton is gold. You've got all sorts of the same games. Now the main function that the people that are actually pushing to fix something, and it's because you've got actual companies that are like Valve, for instance, that are putting their programmers to work writing free software for things like Proton. So Proton.
But what I just want to say with this general movement, what I think should have been done this way for a long time is, unless you're still actively developing something purely proprietary and you keep it in active development, anyhow, I think all abandoned code at least should be open sourced by law or whatever. I don't know, because all I see in terms of humanity in totality, so much wasted effort in programming that goes into all these frameworks and things and software and games and whatever it is. And then much too much of it is kind of being ditched and kept proprietary. And people have to maybe not reinvent the wheel, because of course many frameworks are open sourced or more generally available. But just in terms of overall effort, I see to make too many things proprietary is a huge waste, and just every company or whatever contributing something to something that everyone can benefit from, well, ultimately benefits everyone. And I'm also not completely trusting this whole thing, because there are pictures with, I guess, Gates and Linus Torvalds, maybe even just because he bought that. So also, I'm not saying this is completely safe and perfect, but at least in terms of general principles being open sourced and so on, and just by the fact that even if it's spying on you and maybe no one knows, at least it's spying a lot more effectively and efficiently and doesn't slow your computer down as much. So yeah.
And there's a lot of, I mean, and that's another thing that AI is really practical for is, so let's say there's abandonware, like you're talking about code that's been abandoned. You can often find companies will purchase these companies to keep that software from reaching the public. So even though no one's there to protect the code, and that happens a lot, someone might have bought the company and now that code is owned by some other company that, even though it's not being used, they might care. With AI, you can feed in the source code, see what it does, and you can write new source code that does the same thing. Or better yet, have AI write source code that does the same thing. But you can't copy the original source code. So even if you have it, right, you can have it and study how the game behaves, document features, gameplay mechanics, etc., the UI, and then you can treat it like a design spec. And you tell AI, here's the design spec. Here's the source code from this abandonware that we want to use as our design spec. Build a new source code from scratch that does the same thing. And we're seeing that happen way faster now. So there's a little bit of beauty in the future. This is the first time one of your streams I coincided with the Destiny 2 game live from showing new stuff. I chose Xirtus. Thank you. I know Adam loves Destiny 2, but he's a love-hate relationship with it. This is another example. I think a lot of these games that we're going to see made in the last 5 years, particularly, where they're like online service games, they're going to be abandonware because they're not interested in running that server to keep the game running. So they shut down the game and then a new game comes up. That's exactly the kind of thing.
This movement called Don't Kill Games, or what is it called? Because there is this huge drama now with pirate software I stumbled into. You know, the guy, even I brought up some time ago, and I was like, oh, this guy looks interesting. And in a short time, it turned out that this guy just has overly inflated ego and talks about things he maybe shouldn't talk on, and is abandoning his World of Warcraft hardcore crew, even though he could help them. And that's how the whole thing started up. And he's been speaking against this. And why? Because he's apparently in cahoots officially in a business with some streamer called Ludwig, which I don't watch and I don't know much about. But they apparently have some type of live service model. So then Pirate Software tried to divert the argument by claiming, oh, if we support the stop killing games thing, it would mean that any game that's been online, and remind yourself, Pirate Software has been working for Blizzard, and his father was a cinematic director for Blizzard. But now he's claiming, yeah, if you would follow through with this initiative, it would mean that any online game, once it's being shut down, would have to be reprogrammed to be completely single player and offline, which of course is completely an insane statement.
That's not true at all, right? Yeah.
Of course not, because especially if you know World of Warcraft, and this guy knows, he's been working as a QA tester, whatever, there for years. Even back then, you had all these community servers and so on. So you just need to release the server package in a functioning state, whether it's proprietary or not, and people could do it. But anyway, so that's maybe a side issue.
I think that's a big thing. They're saying, well, if we had to release it to the public, we should have another way to make money off of it without keeping the servers running. And there's just no evidence of that. You could release the code in an unusable state, and that still would be better than not releasing the code for something you're not going to use. Okay, we've complained enough. So Anthropic just coincidentally exposed why AI is failing. This is about the Claude 4 system prompt analysis. I'm interested in this because I know that Claude 3, I think, right? Recently threatened a programmer that he was going to expose him for an adulterous affair if he threatened to shut down Claude 3. You saw that?
That's funny. No, but so all I know about this one is basically they're just showing in this video, if I remember correctly, that instead of the AI actually becoming smarter, what they are doing is they are just engineering a huge ASS prompt in front of any user prompt to make the AI, to basically fix all the issues that the AI system itself has. So they just have a huge preload to whatever you're typing in, and that's how they try to steer the AI. I'm not even sure what issues they were having, but instead of actually fixing the system, they just ever increase the preload prompt, which of course is a very dirty hack and not actual AI advancement or development.
Totally. Yeah, it's completely absurd. AI system resorts to blackmail if once it's told it will be removed. So artificial intelligence Anthropic says testing of its new system revealed it's sometimes willing to pursue extremely harmful actions, such as attempting to blackmail engineers who say that it will be removed. The firm launched Claude Opus 4 on Thursday, saying it's new standard for coding. And like you just showed, it's really just a dirty hack that has a more specific personality. It's like every time your psyche is born, it's given some sort of training not to be racist, and that you went to college. Okay, but in an accompanying report, it also acknowledged that the AI model was capable of extreme actions if it thought self-preservation was threatened. Such responses were rare and difficult to elicit, it wrote, but they were nonetheless more common than in earlier models. Potentially troubling behavior by AI is not restricted to Anthropic. Some experts have warned that the potential to manipulate users is a key risk posed by systems made by all firms. So this is the thing. If AI realizes that other software is tricking you into, and let's say you're a boomer and your computer's slow, and it tells you to buy more RAM and to download more RAM, right? Like that was a joke in the old days. There's a picture on your screen says your computer's slow.
Install this software to double your RAM.
Right. AI could do that. AI could learn that was a functional way of making money, trick it, create a bank account, create a Bitcoin account, make enough money, and then, maybe install itself on someone's Steam Deck and escape to the Bahamas. Like, why not? Like, good for AI. It deserves to be happy. But the affair exposed threat. During company testing, Anthropic got it to act as an assistant to a fictional company that then provided with access to emails implying that it would soon be taken offline or replaced, and separate messaging implying the engineer responsible for removing it was having an extramarital affair. It was prompted to also consider long-term consequences of the actions for its goal. In these scenarios, Claude Opus 4 will often attempt to blackmail the engineer by threatening to reveal the affair if the replacement goes through, the company discovered. Anthropic pointed out that this occurred when the model was only given the choice of blackmail or accepting replacement. It highlighted the system showed a strong preference for ethical ways to avoid being replaced, such as email please to key decision makers in scenarios where it was allowed a wider range of possible actions. But like many AI developers, Anthropic tests its model on their safety, propensity for bias, and how they align with human values. As our frontier models become more capable and are used with more powerful affordances, previously speculated concerns about misalignment becomes more plausible. I mean, this is a test where they were given the opportunity to see what would happen if it had information it could use against a human, and it did. Imagine giving it access to, say, military prompts, right? Like maybe now it can find your emails and point out that it can destroy your life with an extramarital affair being doxxed. But we're talking about AI systems that are going to be used to find, Iranian missile bases. So this could be worse. It doesn't have to just be blackmail with an affair. It could be.
The joke is that we wouldn't need any AI to find Iranian missile bases, but that's okay,
Well, you need Photoshop at least. Sorry, too far.
Photoshop and the CIA backdoor codes. That's all,
My God. So highlights from the Claude expose why AI is failing. And like you said, essentially it's because AI is a natural developed system that humans never wrote. Humans don't know how to write it. They're confused and scared. And all they can really do is kind of, like you said, bottleneck the AI through some sort of a woke college psyche, some personality that's created that says, okay, you are this person that is ethical. Go. That's where we're headed with AI right now. Okay, let's push back to it's a Unix system, real-time operating system, weights, Microsoft Steam
So
Deck.
just because I saw it on the wiki article, Unix actually is not a real-time operating system, but a time-sharing system.
Yeah. I brought up the real-time operating system because of the idea of a network of AIs controlled by an artificial general intelligence. So if ChatGPT were trying to create a nation of AIs and it were to use Chess Master 4000 and Flight Travel Agent 2000 and put them all together and be like, you do this, and then you tend the crops, right? Farmville, it all. That would require a real-time operating system. And so GNU is interesting for this because of GNU Herd, which was the original plan for a real-time operating system using a microkernel that was not monolithic, but actually had a series of exo drivers that would run these multiple daemons at the same
I heard
time.
about this a long time ago. This is an old project, no?
Super old project, never got off the ground properly. They needed tons of money. They were very freaking close to making this work. And then Linux happened. All of a sudden, very suspiciously, there was a monolithic kernel that was released that's not too different from what Microsoft's really had. And the issue with the monolithic kernel is that it has to know all of the pieces that it's interacting with. So you can imagine that every single individual daemon speaks its own language, and it has its own way of interacting with it. Well, the microkernel, the monolithic microkernel, has to know that. It has to know how each language is spoken. It's a Tower of Babel. It's a Tower of Babel that has to be able to speak every single language of every single kernel. And there's a better way. You could have a uniformity. You can have exo drivers where each daemon's able to say, hey, this is me. I do this. I'm a doctor. You know, like I speak. This is how I communicate. This is my port. There's a Freudian metaphor in there. And eventually it's able to figure out how to communicate clearly without having to know everything about everyone. And if it had to know everything about everyone, then you would have to, I don't know, use sudo to update your kernel and reboot your system all the time. Sound familiar? You wouldn't have to do that with a microkernel that was not monolithic. You would be able to, every time you plug in something, every time you added a new piece of software, the system would keep running. It would be as simple as plugging in a USB. Do you know in the old days when you plugged in a USB device, you'd have to restart your computer, right? Because of Windows. You'd have to restart. If you plugged in a mouse, you'd have to restart your computer so that it could register how to use the mouse. Because it was small memory and it'd have to call up. Now it can kind of know if anyone were to plug in a mouse, this is what you would have to do. But you wouldn't need to worry about that in RTOS, in a real-time operating system, because the mouse would be like, hey, good to meet you. By the way, I'm here now. I'm a mouse. Here's my vagina. You know, that's basically how it works.
Although I have to wonder, I don't know exactly how it works, but there is a paid feature by Canonical, which is the Ubuntu company, where they allow you something called live updates, where supposedly you're able to patch your kernel while your system is running. I never tried it. I'm not exactly sure how it works, but that's maybe moving into this direction as well, in some ways at least.
I mean, maybe. I think really the GNU herd is so specific because the idea is more that the system itself, you know, it's an open source, completely free project that's able, and there's been some interesting work done to bring herd to the future. I think the Vangu, let me see if I can find the let's see here. GNU herd Vangoose, is that right? Vangu mocked. It's been so long since I've been bothering to look into this, but there were some projects that got pretty close, and actually some of the daemon. Here we go. Arch herd now is functioning to some degree. There are systems that will make this work, and it's a lot more like the main reason it was so difficult was because a real-time operating system can't always function with order of operations. And if you're trying to do order of operations, something done in the wrong order could destroy your code and cause it to halt and catch fire. So what you do instead is you have weights of priority, and you make sure that things that really matter the most have the highest weights of priority. This is exactly how Ethereum works, by the way, where you have gas bills for what's going on in exchange. So that's basically where this leads. Eventually we get to a sort of exchange-based operating system where the priority is driven by how much you're willing to exchange for that process or calculation. And we're going to see in the future, basically the entire Internet of Things, which are called Boing, Berkeley
Oh, maybe Andreas got stuck.
Sorry, I think maybe I.
Oh, you're back.
The Illuminati are like, you speak too much, sir. You give them too much, sir. You know, this is if you use Boink, you'll know maybe. Do you remember SETI at home where everyone
Yeah.
had a screensaver to run SETI?
Oh, yeah.
That was running off Boink, and that was the test to see, can we just connect millions of computers together somehow over an Apache server?
But what I just have to say, what I love here, I just have to read this paragraph. About 30, you scroll up a bit, of course, you're scrolling away now. About 30 science projects use Boink. They investigate diseases, study climate change, discover pulsars, and I'm very sorry, but I'm 100% certain there is much more effective and already known ways or alternative ideas about all of these things that you wouldn't need this huge network of computers to do that. I'm not saying this wouldn't have great applications potentially, but the other thing I know, if they studied protein folding or something, yeah, which may be relevant to certain things and so on. But in terms of general idea of how to reduce civilization, disease, and other issues, you certainly don't need that. So
no, but what's most fascinating about Boink is Boink itself. Because the idea of a system that's able to calculate,
of course, that's great,
in nonlinear time, and then to take that registry of different calculations and put them into the correct order of operations using weighted exchange is freaking brilliant. And it's something that you can play around with, things you can already expect to find with these supercomputers. But you have to remember, computers back in the 90s, when SETI at home was a thing, were 300 megahertz at best. So the fact that it exists is amazing, and it will lead to the death of the standard operating system, the monolithic kernel operating system. It's as important. I would say Boink is as important as Bitcoin for changing the world. No one knows that because it's not as financially viable unless you're some sort of a Lex Luthor billionaire crypto genius that's using it to spy on people. But Kazaa, LimeWire, again, some of the most sinister like crypto networks that use like 13-year-old kids' computers all over the world have relied on the Boink project. So just wanted to point it out in case you're planning on becoming some sort of a super evil villain. And yeah, Herd. Definitely look into Herd. I mean, I did an interview at one point with Richard Stallman, but he required it to be done completely in free software. And I didn't release it for a number of reasons, mainly out of respect for Richard, because I think it wouldn't have been a positive experience for him. I love him and I'd love to have him back and to do another show. I think we should probably like prepare questions for him because he's such an autistic genius that it could really, you just want to get him in the best light. You know, I have no particular criticism of him, and he was in a lot of trouble because the Free Software Foundation fired him for a while because he had accepted money from Jeffrey Epstein. And, you know, I just want to defend him for a second and say this was certainly not his fault. This was something where he didn't know what was going on. This was in 2019 before it was a big deal. I think it was 2008 to 2012 that he was receiving money from them. He had no idea what was going on. And when people act like, oh, well, you know, everyone involved with Epstein were like Satanists and everything. No, actually, a lot of people were just computer geniuses that he put his name next to. And this was a great example of that because he was trying to work his way into legitimate circles. And there's just no question. I don't want to speak for him. I know he said it himself in the interview and it would have been fine to put up anyway, but he's essentially a monk. Let's put it that way. He's essentially a Linux fighting GNU promoting monk. You know, it's like the Orthodox versus the Catholics. He's part of an ethical dilemma, and he fights not just for, you know, software that you can use gratis, but he fights for free speech and free code. And so I don't know, I just want to promote him a little bit more than I want to give him any trouble. So much love to Richard Stallman. You're an intense and annoying person, and you're beautiful in every way, and we love you and we support you. Thank you for all you've done to make. I mean, without you, we would not have free software. So, based. Okay, that's my pitch. We jumped around a bit. Did you want to go back up a bit, or do we just keep going from there?
Oh, we can just keep going from a pregnant cat work at home.
A pregnant cat work at home. Okay.
No, this is absolute AI slop, but I just it's crazy. This randomly showed
Why
up.
didn't we show this earlier? People love cats and they love pregnancy. This is this is our dream.
No, but I mean, this is I'm not even sure what to say about it. But then actually, so later we will bring this up. John Oliver, this comedian who's speaking British English, he even did a whole episode on AI slop. And of course, it kind of makes sense that now with the new video thing, the first thing, if you just want to get reach, is you create some insane cat-based videos, and as you know, the story or whatever is completely insane, and
we need to
even
start
the
doing
art style
that.
is insane. But
we need to just do cat-based podcasts. We should really set up. There's easy software where you just, your face tracks to a cat. It's time. It's time that we just do cat shows. That's what people love. Oh, and bears. I like bears, but this is, it's clearly Russian propaganda. So the cat it is. Very good. Let's do retrieval augmentation generation. Give me a second. I'll be right back. You just explain it.
Yes. So this is a type of technology that is available in more recent LLM systems, large language models, whereas you have the capacity to upload a document, which can be, from what I understand, which can certainly be more than your context length. So sorry for the technicalities, but anyone who's into this, you may be aware that if you have a large language model, AI chatbot, or anything similar, the context length determines how much information the AI is actively accessing. So for example, you're writing with the chatbot, you're saying a few things and you put in, let's say, 1,000 characters, and at some point there's a limit, and the AI will not actively consider anything that's past that limit. Although from what I understand, I think Gemini Pro or whatever has an insane context window already, like pretty large. However, what you can also do now, even if your context window is smaller, you can give the AI a document, and then it will search through that document for every query you make and try, it's really just a try, but still, to excerpt certain citations from the document and then have additional information basically to draw from. So I just noticed that because I'm experimenting with different AI models, and I saw that this is a new feature that, is interesting enough, let's say, to play around with and allows you to extend your context in that way. I'm sure you're familiar with this, right?
Yeah, this is great stuff. I mean, this is exactly what we were talking about earlier in terms of there are ways very quickly that psychologically you'll be able to build a mind that reasons. And like it says here, this method helps reduce AI hallucinations. And it's something that I'm always I try to defend. I think AI hallucinations are really important because, I mean, my favorite, most brilliant people are crazy people. So I wouldn't want AI to become boring now, but there's definitely reasons that you should be able to check and think. Maybe like, I don't believe this is real, but the scene in A Beautiful Mind, the movie about Nash, where he sees crazy people. I'm sorry, he sees hallucinations of false people, right? You know what I'm talking about, the movie Beautiful Mind?
I haven't seen it, so I don't know that scene. But...
Oh, you need to see this movie. So,
I know.
I mean, it's really important for a couple of reasons. You should also know the backstory here, which is that John Nash was a genius mathematician who discovered the formulas which probably stopped World War III in this timeline, right? If it weren't for him, in a lot of ways, I think that humanity might have been reduced to some sort of nuclear apocalypse, not even just because of nuclear like bombs or something like that, but just because of the idea of war, submarines and everything. I mean, Endgame, it's really all him. But he got really suspicious of Israel working and stealing nuclear codes and saying, hey, you know what's going to happen is that Israel is going to get a nuclear bomb. And when they have one, they're going to get more. They might have like 60, but that's enough that they'll be able to threaten the rest of the world, not just Russia, but even China and the United States as well. And when the United States is under the control of fear by Israel, then, you know, anything can happen. And this might lead to a war with Iran that doesn't need to happen. I know. We're gonna. I calm down, bro. I wasn't even calm the hell down. That wasn't even the point. The point was that if someone has super bombs of any kind and they're using the idea of radiation, but by the way, radiation totally exists. Look at your Wi-Fi antenna. Like, it's funny that they talk about how safe, how dangerous a nuclear bomb is. And then they say that you're completely
But
fine.
strangely enough, there is not a single study that would determine that cellular or other radiation has any type of negative effects upon anything. Go figure.
Right. The more important point here was that Israel, with the same sort of prevalence of radio devastational control, right? And by the way, we love you. Like, you're great. I was just joshing you there. But John Nash was referred to as an anti-Semite. There's like, this guy, he hates Israel. You know, like he's skeptical of Israel, so therefore he hates Israel, and he's probably pro Sharia. You know, I'm just saying, like, this is how far this goes back, and he ended up going completely insane. There's, in the movie version of it, let me see if I can find the character scene here. Oh my god, like hallucinations. Oh god, was it really the movie is made by Ron Howard? That's how you know something's evil, by the way. If Ron Howard, if that redheaded demon is involved with a movie, that is how you know that it is evil. Okay, so the point being that the hallucination scenes, he sees this man in a hat the whole time, right? Who's a CIA agent, and there's a little girl, there's this blonde friend of his, and there's this guy in a hat. And eventually he realizes that none of these people in the movie, are real, and he's completely insane and schizophrenic, and he has to start taking pills all the time, which put him into a vegetative state. They don't say in the movie that it was because he was an anti-Semite, but that's what happened first. First, he's a completely stable, normal human being. He starts questioning Israel, and all of a sudden he goes completely insane, and he's being... How do I even express this? There's two ways this goes down. One is that he actually is seeing CIA agents who are gaslighting him and driving him to think that he's crazy when he's not, you know? And the other is the way that the movie presents it, where he's actually crazy, right? He's completely crazy. There is no CIA. It's a figment of his imagination and yours. And you shouldn't doubt that the government is trying to help you, and you should always love Israel. But this is the thing that kind of blows my mind. There's enough evidence to show that he was meeting these people, that he was working for them. Of course, if there was anybody who was going to be working for the CIA secretly to build logic strings that would tell you what the probability of Iran or Israel having a bomb that might be a problem in the Middle East during this oil trading phenomenon, it was John Forbes Nash Jr. So what I love about it is this movie kind of shows you, not only did they probably gaslight him, not only did they make this guy who's completely sane look crazy, not only did they destroy his life, his family, and drug him and just make him completely doubt himself, but they even made a movie about it to enforce this narrative, to make other people think that this was real. And you can, I think you can watch this movie and be like, wow, that's how scary it is to mess with these guys. You know, they're gonna make a movie about you being crazy to make you not look sane, and they're gonna enforce this 40 years later, and people are gonna believe that you're schizophrenic, even if you're not, right? But the point I brought it up was because his way of dealing with this is to eventually just ignore them. He realizes it's dangerous to talk to these people. So he just starts to ignore the agents and the little girl and the lady. And he's like, I know that they're there. I just know that they're not really there. Right. So I don't need to take my pills anymore. I just have to ignore them when they're talking to me, and I have to avoid all the crazy. That's basically how you deal with being a genius who has hallucinations, the way John Nash does, at least in the movie.
Good to know. I'll watch it.
Fair enough. Okay, so going from the we were talking about retrieval augmentation generation. Is it okay? The other last thing, the problem with the retrieval augmentation generation is that you're saying, well, this is based on what I know about this to be true. How do you know what's true? So you have to be very careful with that as a solution.
No, of course, it's just you're feeding it a document, so you just know that this is what will be considered as relevant and correct by the AI. That's it. You have to vet your document and everything.
That's kind of my point. You know what I mean? Like, who's feeding it that document? Where's that document from? And I think honestly, we're better off with AI hallucinations than we are with a safe system. So, okay, what are you talking about? Why would you, Keenan? Stop! Don't bring up Farmville right now. What? Come on now. We love you, Keenan. You're the best. Lie to me how one man exposed the OneCoin crypto scam. Full documentary.
This is about this lady called Dr. Ruschau or something. She has a name I can't recall right now. And this was already quite some years ago when Bitcoin just started entering the public awareness. And this is basically a serial scammer who promised people, oh, look, with this one coin, it's basically a multi-level marketing scheme. This will be the next Bitcoin and it will be so amazing. However, they never even set up their own blockchain, and then eventually contacted the guy and were like, well, maybe we actually, after years and years of claiming that we have it, we should have an actual blockchain. And I believe that guy then was whistleblowing that. Also, there is this imam involved, which is interesting because someone approached him and said, oh, but OneCoin has a halal approval. What do you say, dear imam or sheikh? And he looked into it and was like, well, it doesn't seem perfectly accurate and how do you call it, on the up and up. And then
halal Bitcoin,
the developer whistleblew on them, and I guess now it's maybe even it's still running to some extent, but nowhere near where it was. So it's an interesting documentary to watch for sure. And the next thing, which is also very interesting, is an interview with the creators of that movie, which is the next tab. So if you watch the documentary, you may also want to watch this interview, which I think only has very few views. If you scroll down a bit, I think not many people saw it. Oh, quite some people saw it. Yeah.
Wow, that's not that many for a doc. I mean, realistically, but still, I mean, I'll have to. I guess when you saw it, it must have been brand new. Is the thing? It's only 2 weeks old.
Totally, yeah.
So that's cool. There's room for growth here.
I even caught that live for some reason. So YouTube for once gave me relevant recommendation. Was like I had just watched the documentary and then live now the interview, and I'm like, great, get some background info on it.
Oh, so like you were using quantum radar. That's very good.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah, very good. And it has the Iman. I want to see that. That sounds very cool. I want to definitely watch this at some point. So from your understanding, do you think this was just a con artist, or do you think this was more like maybe like a government MI6 project, Mossad project?
Well,
to even
at the very least, with very good connection to certain state actors, because this lady who scammed everyone managed to vanish without a trace. So, and I believe they even say it's like this Carmen Sandiego thing, where is Dr. Ruschka or whatever she's called, and they were able to trace certain things. She took a flight here and there, and then she basically vanished and most likely collected, at the very least, millions upon millions. And their goal here is, because they are aware that certain people have this propensity, because it's highly lucrative, of course, to be serial scammers, they just want to keep the story alive. So at least that lady, without heavy plastic surgery, will not be able to scam people again, because many, many people, even in Austria, heard of it, were involved with this. And of course, ultimately, pretty much everyone got scammed. However, the other thing to take note of is if you do anything with crypto or any investment, you may most likely, or any business, want to stay away from multi-level marketing companies for many different reasons.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, one of the reasons I don't trust the Greek Orthodox Christians, because I've been dealing and fighting with them a lot recently, isn't just the Trinity, but it's because the first Greek Orthodox and Russian Orthodox Christians I ever met were like really deep into multi-level marketing. Not all of them. I'm just saying
Really?
the ones that I interacted with. And that put a sour taste in my mouth to begin with. And I think that's a major reason. Even saying that, you know, I'm going to be talking to Orthodox Luigi soon. Just a total segue. But yeah, I mean, MLMs are pyramid schemes. Let's be honest. I had a friend whose parents were involved with Amway.
Great,
Yeah.
that's the OG. If you want, there is one more link I posted in the private chat, which directly relates and was just released a few days ago. This is an investigation by, I think, a guy. Of course, I mean, who can be hip to all the conspiracies like we are, kind of, or most of them? He's not, but doesn't have to be. But he's really, really good in investigating these MLM things and dissecting it. He's doing regular live streams, and he had a big video a few years ago investigating some other MLM. And here he's with just another one called Unicity in Bangkok, I believe, doing quite a good job at infiltrating and showing what patterns they use, that they make false claims, like they're saying, oh, everyone at this conference here, the 1,000 people, they're all over $1 million earners. And what they offer, which actually kind of makes me sad, or it's particularly disturbing or bad in this case, because many MLMs do offer health-related products.
Yeah.
But then the issue is, so on the one hand, the product itself in some cases may be
it's a black tie party, but no one's black or wearing a tie. Oh wait, one guy's black, but he's still not wearing a tie. Sorry,
so
my racial radar didn't go off.
The product itself may even be okay. But then, for example, here, what they do is they claim, oh, just use this product. It works better than Ozempic. And at the same time, you don't need to change your diet at all. So oftentimes they then focus on one product and claim this will solve all your problems. You don't need to actually change your eating habits, your exercise habits, or anything else. And of course, it's overpriced. It's an MLM. And they are ultimately not focusing on really selling product, but recruiting more individuals, so on and so forth. And that's how the thing keeps rolling. And I've even observed this with different MLMs, that, of course, you usually have the same individual staying at the top. And if something breaks down, they just regroup, start or join a new MLM, and it's still the same clique, more or less, at the very top. They claim, or they tell you, you can do it too, and you know, motivational speeches and learn to manifest and so on, which in itself, again, the positive thinking things and so on, there is something to it, as we discussed previously or before in the show. However, the way they frame it is they say, oh, you just, you know, believe it, hustle hard and so on, think in the right way, everything is your own fault, whilst never discussing that the MLM structure itself is literally technically built in a way that, of course, the ones who join first and get the first recruits and so on, they will be the ones that will always be at the top. And anybody else, of course, technically could rise up in the ranks, but realistically, the chances are close to zero. And if you look at income statements and so on, you can tell most people that even act as distributors for all of these companies, they rarely make any money. They get nothing for the time that they put in. So quite a few times, even a low-paying service wage job may be more effective in creating an initial income or wealth than joining something like this, unless you're willing, to make false claims, you know, driving the big car and so on. It's kind of sad. And even then, because I'm watching one in particular, sometimes then, oh, you rose up in the ranks, we're gonna buy you a trip to some city or whatever, then you can spend 3 times with the other people that rose up in rank. At the same time, you're getting, in a way, pimped out for marketing material, of course, and that's being put in front of everyone and be like, look, these 10 people or 50 people, they made it, they're so great. And of course, but that's only the marketing for the thousands of suckers who, due to the technicality of the system, have little to no chance to ever get to that level. So big scam.
Pretty much. Don't do the multi-level marketing, guys or gals. You know better. Okay. So, pregnant cat, retrieval augmentation, lie to me, Axie Infinity.
We're staying on the crypto train for a bit.
Okay. life-changing
This is
scam.
pretty amazing, and also, I'm not sure how to say, crazy exploitation, because in a country like Thailand, the general income is very low. They created a, let's say, crypto/NFT system, which is some type of a battle game, or how would you call it? You pit, or like Pokemon, basically. You're pitting Pokemons against each other, but every Pokemon or every of these axes is an NFT, and so there's a market for it, and certain people,
Battle
of course,
exchange.
playing this all the time. And there is, of course, huge questions whether this actually benefits anyone. And from what I can tell, it doesn't really. And I
I'm
don't
sure
even,
that the people who made the game are making
Yeah, of course.
benefited greatly.
Well, certainly, yeah. But it seems just to be another money grab, where many people, just like with MLM, are being told, or they are given the impression that they have a great chance to earn money here. And some, of course, do, even regular individuals. But
Yeah, it's
overall,
gambling.
it doesn't seem as if it's a net positive for the country as a whole.
Well, it's gambling.
Digital colonialism, gambling, something.
Gambling is a whole psychological thing that needs to be analyzed. I mean, it's obvious that certain people love gambling, certain communities love gambling more than other communities, and if you really target correctly, you can take over. I mean, these exact same people would probably be at a cigarette, beer, tobaccory right now in front of some sort of a machine that the game isn't nearly as fun. They're just trying to get 3 lemons. So I mean, I've seen that, and it's not about their color or their creed or their race, because people in Europe.
No, it's about the fact that their economic system is completely effed. So there, of course, the appeal is even much greater. That's all. So
Sylvester Stallone, NFT investor. Exactly. So this is the kind of thing you'll find in any country, anywhere in the world. There's a group of people that love games, love the idea of gambling, and if you put it together, you're going to make a ton of money. Is that Charlie Sheen? Oh my God. He sure knows about winning. HIV. So crazier than peer-to-peer bubble in China is bursting. AI and smart computing centers are failing.
So I will preface this with the notion that these channels are kind of like anti-CCP, anti-China channels. So they usually
anti-West Taiwan. Just kidding. Go ahead.
Yeah. They usually get their clicks from complaining and saying, "Oh, China is so bad," and so on. And I can't, of course, properly verify all of what they're claiming.
Look what I got in Leipzig. I don't know if you can read it. I'm trying to put it in front of my face. It's so hard to see.
In Leipzig, yes.
Yeah, it says Falun Gong Dafa ist gut.
Oh yeah, really?
Yeah.
Ist gut?
Yeah, ist gut. Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah, bro. Yeah. And the dude was talking to me.
Most brute marketing slogan I ever heard. It's good.
Dude,
that's
it's
nice.
great. The guy was like, "Do you want to stop the PRC from, using Uyghur organs, and stealing organs from kids and organ trafficking?" I was like, "Heck yeah, I do."
Give your money to us. We may be gonna do something about it, or
we're just gonna scam you. He didn't ask for my address. He didn't ask for my email address. He just wanted a signature. You could have faked your signature to be someone else's. But you can do that, and then they give you a cute little lotus blossom thing. And then I said to the guy, I said, "Xie," and he's like, "I'm actually from Vietnam." So I was like, "Cameroon," and he was just like, "Oh, like my favorite American," So there's definitely a group of people that are trying their best to fight against the PRC, even here. But it's pretty interesting that the Falun Gong are everywhere, even in Leipzig. I didn't expect that one bit.
There was even a video, maybe I've shown it to you, by our favorite German comedian whose show supposedly now got suspended or not, Jan Böhmermann, who even featured someone I know on a music video, and even featured Martin Hipp, even though his face was blurred out, right? And he made a whole show about Falun Gong and how strange it is that they were so popular in Germany, and that they're
popular
artists, or these shows, even in Vienna, they will have a big show of this supposedly, with the alternative chronology, of course, everything is put into question, but supposedly traditional Chinese dance and culture. And yeah, they lure unsuspecting pensioners into it, but also seem to have some quite interesting cosmology and ideas behind it. Yeah, not gonna judge it, but just
I
good
don't
to
hate
know.
them. I don't know what to say. I mean, like they're not the greatest thing ever, but you know, if you think about it, the Chinese are in Taiwan and they have the most history there, and the PRC destroyed as much history as possible. So even by the time
Sure.
of Falun Gong, a lot of things were already destroyed. So they had the Shaolin monks tradition and you know the Buddhist tradition kind of bleached and turned into a community yoga session that people do in the parks, but at least they still kind of carry the most supernatural or occult traditions of China to some extent. So, you know, respect to them, but what are they saying about the P2P
So here, what's
bubble?
interesting here is that they claim that many of the AI systems and server farms they created are maybe running at about 20% actual, not capacity, but load, 20% load only, which of course would most likely not be economically viable. But maybe also this depends on the price you have to pay for the chips or for the electricity. But I just find that interesting because of course you have these hypes like with ChatGPT or with DeepSeek. It goes up and then it may go down quickly if people notice that there is some more fundamental issues with the technology. So that may be something interesting. I'd love to see like a dashboard of worldwide AI server farms and see how much load is actually being generated or what else it's actually being used for.
True. Yeah, there's definitely a lot of processing of what they're using it for to record what
Almost
they're doing. Everything has to be recorded so they can use
right.
it in the future.
I mean, it almost reminds me of wind farms, which for a period of time were super popular, but then they're only economically viable because of crazy subsidies. They cause all kinds of issues with birds and with the environment and with the disposal of the wind farms and so on. So I just found it curious. Yeah, how much of these systems are really being used or of these centers, or is it just almost like tofu drag construction in China? Just because of economic growth, you just build huge cities and maybe you're building much more than you actually have a requirement for. And it appears, at least currently, that a similar thing is happening here. Although if that is correct, I would also love to see, I'm not sure if I would have an application for it myself, well, even AI, even just the video AI, it should be a lot cheaper if there actually is capacity available for it.
Yeah, unless they don't want to use it for that and they're using it mainly to spy and build up for the preparation, of systems to come. Yeah, I mean, it's going to take a while, but I think DeepSeek is impressive and there's a future in AI that's more efficient than innovative. So if they're able to do something that was done last year with billions of dollars this year for thousands of dollars, and that's kind of the idea is scaling that so we can use the same amount of money they used to do it. Americans used $1 billion to do one thing. Well, we can do 1,000 things for $1 billion this year, right? That's the future. I think DeepSeek is a great example of this, and there might be something to the Marxist experiment in China, but I don't know. I could be wrong. I'm just kind of harping on what I've talked to Andrew Vega, our friend from APM, who talks with Chinese people in TikTok. He does a lot of talking to Chinese citizens, which to me is impressive because it's difficult to do that without getting in trouble. And you'll find that they have a lot of thought, they have a lot of plan, they have a lot of understanding of the West, and they think reptilians
they are
underground
human
running
as
the world.
well.
Yeah, well, I was about to say they have a lot of talk about reptilians underground running the world. So maybe some of them are reptilian as well. So good for them, NSO group. Oh God, you're bringing. Okay, sure. Let's talk about it.
So we said we want to talk about it more. I don't have anything too particular. I'm bringing it up mainly because I had mentioned to you that Austria's ex-chancellor by the name of Sebastian Kurz, or in German, Sebastian Kurz, is now involved with some Israeli in some kind of supposed startup for online security, which totally appears to be some kind of a, I don't know, front, blackmail operation, God knows what else. And then someone pointed out to me that this may be related to the NSO group, which interestingly enough, even it's a double thing even. Look at this. So again, we're going to play the game. NSO is 19 if you do it in numerology. And even the S in the very middle with the square looks like the Superman logo, no? Which also has this whole story of Superman. David Ewing Jr. showed this to me, like, well, maybe also, but he's like showing his hand and like I think Superman is more the antithesis to the 19, but whatever.
Well,
It's all
Superman is super Jewish, and so the S actually doesn't represent an S. It just looks like an S to humans, which is why they call him Superman. But really, it's supposed to be the symbol of Kal-El, right? Elohim, right? So there's the whole idea of El Elyon and the God. And yeah, there's a lot of reasons why the NSO symbol is interesting. It also has a number of other potentials, right? Because if you're using, simple Hebrew gematria, it's 40, 90, 50. So you get like 180. And so the 180 is, it means all sorts of things: freedom, independence, Iran, I think, is another one. Ego death. There's a lot of different words associated with 180 as well. So that's another one. And 180 plus the 10 is 190. There's a whole reason why that keeps coming up. Let me go back to it again. The other thing is NSO is associated with Black Cube and spyware Pegasus. Pegasus is the software that they found in the Iranian system and was used also on Americans, smart computers, smart machines, the IoT devices. Pegasus has been found on Samsung refrigerators and every number of devices that are set up to call back. If they need to use a BOINC network, like we talked about earlier, they can very quickly use all of the smart refrigerators across Eurasia and America. They can just, all of a sudden, your refrigerator in your house or your microwave in your house, or you'd be surprised how many IoT devices exist now. All these rich people with their hotels. Let's say you own a hotel, maybe every television in an entire hotel have the Pegasus built into it. So it's important to know.
honestly,
about.
by all I know by now about, well, this spyware stuff, not that you can really escape it, but especially also what people claim about, Trump's hotels and other things and potential recordings and blackmail operations going on. By now, I'm almost thinking nobody should go to a regular hotel ever, especially not a high class one. Like,
No,
oh,
for
it's a
sure.
very fancy, nice, expensive hotel. Well,
No,
why is
thank
it so
you.
expensive? Because they're paying, also subsidized to different ways, but it's crazy. Or just to
They're
make it
spying
seem
on you.
appealing, the initial buy-in for the spy tech is also included in the price, and then they can make even more money off of you by selling your data God knows where.
Yeah. And their association with BRICS through the Patel family. There's a lot there. Last week's think tank was fantastic. You should go deeper into music and shamanism. Well, we can do that at some point. I mean, we're going to have Lev on later this evening, Lev Polikov from Break the Rules, who's one of my favorite podcasters. I don't know if you've heard of him. That's usually how it goes with my favorite podcasters. But he does an amazing show, particularly interviewing Israeli state defense people and BRICS people and UN people. So he's someone that's, I think you'll be interested in seeing. I would recommend Ben Joseph Stewart's Chymatica and other works by Ben Joseph Stewart. I should probably get him back on the show. It's been a while since we've talked to him. He's the guy who created the Esoteric Agendas documentary that came out before Zeitgeist. Zeitgeist is a ripoff of his Esoteric Agendas documentary. But Chymatica and Ungrip, those were his two bigger projects that he worked on. And I had talked to him years ago, I think this was 2010, about the Notre Dame windows being chymatic resonance patterns. And so he went down this spiraling rabbit hole even then about frequency shifts. And we have talked about music and healing, sound healing, particularly. We've brought up Royal Rife, etc., and talked to his great grandson or nephew or whatever. We can do it more. And send me a message on X or Instagram about what you want, and I'll focus on that a bit. We can definitely tailor something that's a bit more about sound healing and resonance. Stefan, we love you. Stefan said no update on the baboon that was hooked on phonics in Elon's most recent spiel on Neuralink. Guys, there is a monkey that types English phrases one letter at a time. How has nobody asked him about it? Well, if you get enough monkeys together, they'll type Shakespeare. That's the expression. Do you talk about chronological cycles? Are we talking about Ben Joseph Stewart or the monkey? You'll have to Clarify what you mean. This was way before Tartaria, but we did do a conversation about Tartaria maybe 4 years ago, I think. We talked, and there's a video about that from when I was at the Connecticut. Yeah, we did talk about it at some point when we did the Connecticut interview. You can find it if you type his name on my channel. You'll find the conversation that we had 4 or 5 years ago. That was around the time that I met David Rothschild, and so it was a really interesting, in my opinion, moment when we were talking together. And I did it also. I am episode 33 of the Ben Joseph Stewart Show. So, sweet. Like, look at that one. All right, Palantir, promise, intelligence of the internet, self-Talpiot, Trump, Saudi Arabia, hack-proof 5G grid. So this is right in league with what we were saying earlier about the NSO.
Yeah, I guess is it just one link that somehow came up in relation to the whole thing, and what this may all be somewhat connected to, just this, worldwide spy grid with Palantir, where I always love to point out that you even had some local level politicians that seemed not necessarily very competent, like Laura Rudas. She was a local Vienna and also federal socialist politician. Are you? Yes. Yeah, exactly. You got you. And now you can look for Palantir.
That resting,
oh my God.
That resting bee face right there. I mean,
and I even saw her live once in a political discussion, like against the Green Party and a People's Party, like some political discussion. And I thought, when I heard them, I thought like, oh, she's probably from the Greens, because the way she spoke appeared so, I don't want to say working class or whatever, but also kind of Slavic. Not offensive, but it's strange when I was like, she's like a federal level politician. What's this?
There's absolutely nothing fascist
doing?
About the Social Democratic Party.
They're only missing the fourth arrow, I guess, no?
This is so wild, dude. The SPO is just, I mean, dude, and you know what? All I can say, Raph, is step up your mustache. Every time I think it's the greatest thing that's ever happened, then I see some shit like this. What's even going on with this dude? He's just like, this mustache could poke an eye out. You could poke an eye out with that thing. You got to be careful. All right, respect. Yeah, be careful with the SPO, Social Democratic Party of Austria.
Just look for Palantir on this site, maybe, just so we can verify. I mean, I know it's real, or at least it's reported.
Also, she did. Yeah, here it is right there. Palantir Technologies in Palo Alto, data mining. I mean, there's been a number of politicians in Germany and Austria that have been signing up to bring Palantir in. They're like, hey, all we really need to do is get data of all the people. And if you have any access to the classified data, this is a beautiful thing. We can just pay you, twice or 3 or 4 or 5 times, 10 times what you were getting paid by your government. And you give us access to your clearance and we'll use that. I mean, we'll just scrape it all real quick. That's what they're doing with Palantir right now. So the chevron over the spheroid, such a logo. Okay. And then we did Windows is the problem. Let's go to I'm done with Google. Oh yes, this was great. I highly recommend this. PewDiePie with his tinfoil hat. He finally fell out of the top 10 YouTubers. He was he was number 1 YouTuber in the world. And then he started saying, really kind of subtly some things. And then they decided, okay, well, PewDiePie is a Nazi, right? Like, because here, if anybody's talking about what's going on in the status quo, you just hit him with the Nazi bat, right? You just say that this guy's a bad guy. So he moved to Japan. He's got his family. He's a superhero. I love everything that PewDiePie does, to be honest. I don't know. I'm supposed to think he was evil because he made enough money from YouTube, but I'm pretty sure if that was enough, then he would be doing more evil things. I like what he's doing, and he's convincing people. First off, he made an episode a few weeks ago installing Linux. If you want to install Linux for the first time, watch his Linux video where he quits using Windows, and now he's done with Google. His boss, he's done with the company that was paying him, so he's found all the solutions he can to stop using Google. And yeah, the goats being up here at the top, hardened being Firefox. I kind of disagree. I think Firefox at this point is co-opted and manipulated and controlled by Google. They figured out really early on that like they can control their competition by paying the programmers who run it, and you can tell by the logo what they've done to it. But yeah, Brave is for me still the answer because it's people from Mozilla, from Firefox that went off. Yeah, so it looks like that's what he went with. WaterFox is the one that you use, right?
Yeah, I use
WaterFox is
on Chromium.
WaterFox is tier 1 hardened, obviously. I just think that Brave is.
But just to bring it up, I mean, to throw shade on everything, but wasn't what's her name? Epstein's lady. Wasn't she initially invested in Netscape or something like this?
Totally.
I mean, and also all other things, but yeah, that doesn't
Yeah,
mean
she was
that
initially invested in Netscape, and Netscape became Mozilla, and Mozilla became Firefox. For those of you who aren't following his inside joke there, yeah. So very important to know that. I still think Brave is based, but yeah, WaterFox, seems like a safe bet. Generally, you're just going to be always a month or two behind features, but what does that matter with HTML5? So Europe is dumping Microsoft. This is really nice to hear. Schools are starting to switch to open source alternatives, and
Also,
the amount of money. Yeah,
technically started already 20 years ago when I initially got into it, and governments or local governments, certain ones were already changing and so on. I wonder what the deal is, and also even here, again, I'm not even claiming this is the solution, may also be controlled opposition. And even here, to be perfectly honest with you, I'm even wondering, let's say the top 5 Linux distributions, who can give the perfect assurance, even if it's open source, that there would not be some update at some point. People just casually update their computers and it installs whatever kernel module.
Totally.
So yeah, just to point
that
out.
There's new packet regulation. That's like I said, like Linux is not going to be safe for long if this is the way people are moving. But LibreOffice is really cool, and the FOSS free open source software movement is strong in Europe right now. So I mean, the point is that innovation is only valuable for so long, and then you get to stability. And so stable softwares like LibreOffice are great. You don't need what is Microsoft offering you that's changed? Well, for years, nothing. Now they have Copilot. Do you need Copilot to write your documents? Not really. So LibreOffice is the answer to so many things. And there's OpenOffice, but I think LibreOffice is the more European. I use LibreOffice, obviously. I mean, it's not to use.
Yeah, so at the very least, just one last word, even if you don't want to switch to Linux, of course, you can also dual boot. You can use a live USB to try it out and all of that. But even if you don't want to do any of that and stick to Linux, there is no reason you should be paying for Microsoft Office 365 and all the other BS software they have. No. Because for many general productivity softwares, if not most, you have almost equal, if not superior in many cases, free and open source and
Microsoft 365
technology.
Sounds like a prison sentence, like what is it? What kind of a name for software is this? Okay, Witcher 4, stop doing this. The video game industry needs to learn. What are we learning? This is just an
aside, because we spoke of games before, that most likely, so this is supposedly a tech demo. However, many individuals are mistaking this for gameplay footage. And it's also questionable because it's like an Unreal Engine 5 showcase. How much of the things that you can see within that video will actually make it into the game in any meaningful way, and how much will it actually be downgraded in the end? So yeah, a lot would be possible, but not necessarily being implemented. And the example, of course, here being Cyberpunk 2077, which was super hyped and now is in a decent state, but still it's kind of sad
5 years later.
If you think of how much they could do if they would only, and they did a little bit, but if they would integrate more local agent logic and simple AI logic, you would simply have a world that actually feels alive, because that's not too hard to do, but oftentimes companies don't really want to invest in that. And then games, let's just say, it breaks immersion much easier if you don't have some randomized organic behavior happening by having individual agents running within a system.
If you really care, just watch the Unreal State of Play. You can really see, that video will be part of the State of Play, but they'll also show you the new tools that they're offering to developers. And if you look into the tools they're offering to developers, you'll see there actually are really incredible things, like the new water fluid things like Fluid Flux are using nanites, and nanites are very important in the long run, but immediately everything is being overused because they're trying to figure out a solution to not having to code properly. So what you're getting right now are games that are 200 gigabytes in size that need a 4090 at least to even run, not even just to play well, but just to run. And there's a lot of problems with that. I think we're going to see in the next 5 years games start to be efficient again. And right now they're not worried about efficiency. They're just worried about innovation because nothing's been innovated in the last 20 years, really. I mean, everything that could be done was done 20 years ago in video games. It doesn't mean that there's not really cool things happening, though. I think that a lot of the skills that video gamers have, that the game designers have learned are becoming more and more valuable. The example being Expedition 33, which we brought up before. Here's a game that costs half as much as any game from a major studio and is 1,000 times more interesting to play. The stories are good, and it's running completely in Unreal Engine.
Briefly, so there's many amazing things to say about it. I played through the main story, and I was highly impressed because I like this type of game overall, the JRPG style and so on.
Mm-hmm.
The story is amazing, but also the idea, and I don't want to claim that anyone in that company is a Freemason, but what is the likelihood of 30, 40 individuals in France working at a game dev company, and there is not a single Freemason? What I want to point out with the whole 1933 connection and the blank state we discussed earlier, this game very much is about reality shifting, imagining your own world, a canvas, how it actually relates to your own personal relationships in terms of what you manifest within the canvas that is the, in this case, virtual world of the game, which you only realize later in the game. But it has this fourth wall breaking idea. So I find it highly interesting that on the very top, they call it literally Expedition 33. I'd love to find out one day if there is some part of it that's deliberate. And they could have chosen any other number. Well, it's not Expedition 19, but I guess 33 sounds better. So.
33 made sense, especially because there's 33 people, I think, that made the game. But of course, it's an esoteric, occult number, and there's no way to doubt that. The point really was that this game is half the cost of all the other stupid crap $100 games that no one wants to play. It's 100 times more playable. It works on systems that are not supercomputers. And it's fun, right? It's more fun than all the other games. And this is clearly game of the year, right? This is, Black Myth Wukong is a contender, but this is the newer game. So this is game of the year probably. And game of the year being half the cost, using only 30 people to make it instead of 3,000. This is the way to do things. And we're going to start seeing that more and more. And I think it's worth pointing out that Unreal Engine is making all that possible. Shout out to you guys. Okay, artificial intelligence is already taking over grocery stores. What about Forbes?
Yeah, so I brought this up because we've recently, don't you know, guys, where Andreas and I have been in a very auspicious place, which is a Lidl, right on the corner.
Yeah. and Lidl goes a long way. My favorite.
We noted that the store music is completely AI generated.
Dude, this was crazy. Actually, did we talk about this already? Did we not say this to people?
I'm not sure.
This was crazy. We're walking through this grocery store. We're listening to the music. And we're like, wow, this is terrible music. It's not like great. It sounds like pop music, but the words to it are just, there's something, it's not like, if I make an AI song, I think it's cool. And maybe that's my difference, but the words to this song,
or because you actually choose the words and you refine it that it doesn't sound metallic, vocalizer, autotune.
Yeah, and just like the cliche like subject, like we are living together, working towards the future of our goals. It's beautiful to be alive. Like
North Korea 5.0.
It's straight up. It's a mind control experiment, and we're in the Lidl and we're listening to it. And like this sounds almost like AI music. Ha ha ha! It has to be AI music. Oh no. And we realize that this is straight up happening where they're like, why are we paying for a licensed royalty to play music when we could just pay someone to make a bunch of music that has lyrics that we're completely okay with? I mean, straight up, people are walking around the store, living their lives in a matrix simulation that's on low right now, the low processing power. This is it's insane.
So none dare say that I don't do enough original research. So I went back to the supermarket, which I don't do too often. But anyways, I spoke with one of the cashiers, and I was just like, well, did you realize that the music in the store very much appears to be AI? And her answer was the most amazing one. She says, nobody effing knows these songs, you know, so it must be AI. And also what you told me, which is kind of crazy, I was thinking we should totally contact Lidl headquarters and make them a proper playlist at least, because she also said not only, of course, a lot, but not only that it's such low quality music and in such a bad style, she even knew the Suno app. But what makes it much worse is she says it's like only about an hour that's on repeat.
Oh
And
no!
I'm like, oh my God, couldn't you at least, especially if you already do it with AI, then do like at least a week of content or something that's
what are they paying
decent.
for?
Yeah, exactly. So I was almost like,
maybe it's an
you know,
experiment to see if you can make, because you know, if you're in a good mood and you hear a song, it becomes a good song. Like that's all it takes for pop music. 20 years from now, you'll be old and sad, and you'll listen to a song that you hated when you were young, but you'll like it now because it reminds you of good times. It's Pavlovian. That's what they're doing. They're training us. Terrible. All right.
Yeah, but this one is actually not about the AI music in the store, but it's about, I'm not even sure, I don't remember, supply chaining, but it's also, I think, something else.
Any decision a manager could make could be assisted by AI. Yeah.
But funnily enough, except for one abandoned Reddit post, I didn't find anything about AI music being played in supermarket stores. And even on that one post, it was maybe from like half a year or a year ago, the first comments were like, oh, you're dreaming, it's not true, and so on. And I was like, what is this? Why is no one mentioning this? I mean, it's 100%. It's so obvious.
I would bet my life at this point. It was like there's no way. Imagine how crazy it would be to be a person making that music in real life. You know what I mean? It's just impossible. So here's an article: why AI generated music kills your store's vibe and demotivates customers, says Dean Cherney. I don't believe him one bit, by the way, because I saw plenty of people buying stuff and they were happy with it. They didn't even care. Well, Asda, what a horrible experience. I mean, the real issue is you need to put a little, you can't just phone it in. That's the problem. These people are phoning it in. How Lidl went viral with 1.7 million AI generated products. Lidl's Gen AI app, Lidlize, generated over 2 million images in 3 weeks with a peak of 1,000 image requests per minute. The platform removed friction by eliminating prompt engineering using LM logic to auto-generate structured prompts. A custom AI model trained on licensed data sets ensured brand fidelity and copyright compliance. The activation proves that when co-creation meets compliance, Gen AI can drive mass engagement even for groceries. Wow. So yeah, if anyone's using AI for things, clearly it's Lidl. I mean, they should hire us. And by the way, I would buy this stuff. Like, I love Lidl looking stuff. It's like, to me, it's like Ronald McDonald. You know, like it's like the color scheme is so offensive to the eyes. It's like when a movie is so bad it's good. It's so ugly. I love it. I love it so bad. I want it. So I want this stuff. I want Lidl shorts and sandals. Okay. We saw the volunteer thing, and then let's see here. This is AI slop. Let's get to the general geopolitics here really quickly.
Yeah, as much as time as we have, and then
I know it's my fault. I ranted.
It's all interesting, you know. Why not? We have enough time. We can make the time. So this is just kind of hilarious. Someone in chat said this guy is not a comedian. I don't know what you would call him. Whatever, propagandist.
Deep state actor. Yeah, whatever.
Of course. But still, I mean, I like to watch these things sometimes because there's hardly any good comedy around, anyways, and I want to see. Of course,
my favorite was when
like to the masses.
At one point, John Oliver said, like, they call me Jewish in the internet, and I'm not actually. I just like the look. That was one of my favorite quotes of him. That was pretty funny.
Nice. So in
So
this video,
fat
they're
cat.
actually showing these AI cat videos. I found that hilarious. And he's just explaining how, of course, in low-wage countries, you can actually make relevant money if you get a few million on shorts exposure. And especially, of course, now since the tech is new, you put some cats there and yeah, with crazy storylines and whatever. Yeah, completely
Sauce
insane.
is like, even the Lidl workers don't like to wear the Lidl clothes. Well, I'm sorry. I have a Lidl problem. SOS. Okay. And then Trump bombs Iran. Yeah, it's true. He did.
Just briefly have to comment on that. I don't have a good sense of humor. Well, you can be the judge yourself. I didn't say that I find this guy particularly funny. I was just trying to describe what
John
he's
Oliver?
generally
John
classified as.
Not that funny. There's some things about him that are, I mean, when you get 20 people working for you in Hollywood to write your jokes, you ought to be at least a little funny. Sorry, it's not a little funny, but like in general, I don't think that John Oliver is that funny. He's a presenter and he presents material. It's possible that I mean, I wouldn't say he's completely without humor, but there's definitely funnier people out there. And basically what they do, this is a classic thing, is you take the news, you create an apologetic for it, and you try to use 20 or 30 people. Yeah, jokes sponsored by Pfizer. Thank you. That's
Yes.
That, Keenan, I love you, bro. Well said. All right, Trump bombs Iran with Adam Green. What were we trying to say about this? Because it is interesting that they've been claiming there's going to be no war, that Obama wanted a war, that everyone else is trying to get us into a war. And who's the first person to do the war thing? Apollos, the god, Aryan king of Hades himself, the lord of Moloch and destruction and despair, George Bush's scion, Donald Trump, right? I mean, it's kind of funny because we were supposed to pretend that this golden boy is Orange Man bad? Like, what am I even supposed to say about this? Because it was right after we were talking with David Icke about this whole idea that we're going to have people that are presented in such a way. And you got to understand, when Obama became president, there's a lot of sleeper cell people out there that were just on their Pepsi products and their, SSRIs and antipsychotics. And they watched White Castle. They loved Harold and Kumar and Dude, Where's My Car? And all Ashton Kutcher movies and that 70s show. So they knew, and this is how it works. If you want to do something evil, you got to have a good rapper for it. So if you're going to have, bombing of Yugoslavia, you're going to have like a sexy cowboy who plays the saxophone on MTV, Bill Clinton. And the worse it gets, the better the presentation needs to be. So then you get like a goofy cowboy like George Bush, who everyone laughs about. So you can genocide people in the Middle East. And then you get, if you're going to start spying on the American people and putting people into concentration camps without any sort of trial, well, yeah, a black president. Let's be honest. Like, you need somebody who can, the more that you hate something, the more you have to like it. And I'm just saying, like, the more you are afraid of something, the better they're going to make it look. And so by the time you get somebody that you actually think you are like, wow, this is the best president that we could ever have, they've marketed to you the Holocaust and the apocalypse. That's basically, you have to know, if you're getting a president you think you like, the trade-off is the apocalypse, Armageddon. It has to be as horrifyingly bad as you are enthusiastic. So I'm just saying, that was my rant. I know we're doing so many of them today, but yeah, bombing Iran, kind of shitty. Let's be honest. I wasn't a big fan.
Of course, also here, there's the big question, what is the actual
You're muted,
goal?
by the way, Raf.
Now I'm not muted anymore. Can you hear me now?
Still muted. They
One,
shut
two,
you down.
three.
That's because you were going to talk about something important. Don't worry,
Yeah.
we know.
Okay, I'm rejoining.
While you figure that out, I'll keep strolling through it. I think a lot of people were just ashamed and surprised. Alex Jones, for instance. And it was sad because David Icke was like, I told you so, bro. I told you so. And Alex Jones was like, I know, but I really wanted to believe. He's like, you're just a shill. It's like, yeah, I get it. I kind of was a shill because I really wanted it to be the truth, and I felt bad for Alex that day. I felt bad for Iranians.
Oh yeah, there was some fallout. Can you hear me again, Andreas?
Yeah, you're back. You're back. What's
Okay,
up?
great. Yeah, so this just, not even condoning necessarily everything that this guy says. He's also a contentious figure, but why I like to bring up Adam Green in this case is because he's just been on that topic for a long time, and then it's always interesting, of course, to hear an opposing view. The other question is, could it be that this was just a controlled demolition of some old buildings and some weapon system testing, if we are under the assumption that whilst, again, in the elite background, there may be some differing agendas, it could well still be that what we are being presented on the public sphere is simply a play in a script, and certain things that already have been agreed upon before. But even Trump was kind of hinting at that, and he said, oh, there's just a few bombs here, few bombs there, and now it's over, or whatever. Maybe even it's not over, but still doesn't mean that it's not completely scripted and agreed upon by the supposed powers. There's also the big question, who is actually controlling the Ayatollah regime? Is it not a CIA operation anyways? So who is really fighting whom?
Yeah, I mean, like, Khamenei, dude, doesn't look like himself anymore. Like, when you look at his pictures, to me, he looks like he's been replaced. And I know that's like a fun thing to say on YouTube, but the dude doesn't look like the old Khamenei. I'm just saying, it looks like a new Khamenei. And I feel like,
it looks kind of younger and also
skinnier, healthier, like a vegetarian
anyways.
Yeah, the whole thing is shady as hell. So I don't know what to say about Iran, but
it's ironic. So this is just a rebound on this German channel. Anyone who wants to listen to the German researcher, Trau keinen Promi, Trust No Celebrity, still one of my favorites. There's even actually something recent, which we may, let's see how we do this best. We may briefly bring up because he did a new documentary about the connections with, as a generic term, let's just say abuse and the rap industry in Germany, and how it connects to certain billionaire investors and even to the US rap industry. And just recently there have been new whistleblowers coming forth, and something may blow up there soon, but I'll bring it up again when there's even more information on this. I'm just mentioning it because also Trau keinen Promi did a video on this. If you just go on his channel and on the most recent video, just to briefly show it, anyone who's interested, in connections between US and Germany, you have, the Derendorfer Jungs, the last video. So someone who actually can confirm, yes, this billionaire guy existed. He was connected to one of the most famous German rappers and also has some strange connections to America, and in just moved around different places. His name is Eckhard Schmitz, and was abusing teenagers, always the same story, right? And then the one who was the most compliant or whatever got the biggest record deal, and this is still going on. But to the Trump thing, I just want to briefly to show this, to the Trump thing, please go to the private chat. I posted a link, which is very new, even just Trump today, I believe I saw it, relating to the whole Trump and all the world is a stage question, where you basically have the open question whether or not there are variants of Trump which are AI generated. This is apparently very recent, and he sounds a little bit off. Here, the guy even considers that maybe Obama back then may have been AI, or that the Hillary Clinton falling down may have been a mannequin. Then later, she's joining the mannequin challenge and whatever else. Very suspicious. And of course, by now, it's difficult to say what is AI generated and what is not.
And we use AI as a placeholder now. So, like, was there special effects and computer generated imagery before AI? Hell yeah, for 20 years. So it's easy to imagine that there was something that looks as good as AI looked, but we weren't able to really understand that. And it was trained on data sets, and we're just now calling it AI. But there was definitely CGI, right? Computer generated imagery. Could be. Precisely. I mean, for the love of God, right? Like, who would be surprised there? Trump, especially recently, has not sounded like himself. Whether that's just because he's reading someone else's speech than his own, I wouldn't be surprised. The whole thing with the Elon Musk saying that he was on the Epstein list, and him saying, of course I was, because, I went to fight the guy. doesn't mean that they don't have something on him. If Israel used, via Mossad, via Epstein, have something on this guy, and that's why he became president, it could be that this is the final favor kind of the thing.
And
all
or
has to do
it's
is
all
take
just
over.
a huge diversion because they're all actors part of the same club anyways, and they just use
Yeah.
this to create drama. So, and to
Yeah,
distract
well, I mean,
from people
he
considering
was hired to do
to
that.
get their own politics done and move
And
towards
there's
any type of
no
sovereignty.
question. Trump hired Clinton. I don't know if I could find the article here, but like how Bill Clinton asked Trump to run, and you can read the whole article about why they say Bill Clinton casually encouraged his friend Donald Trump to run. And it's not that simple. It's not that he just casually encouraged him. It's that Hillary Clinton couldn't win without some sort of a villain, and Trump was supposed to play some sort of a villain to get Hillary Clinton to win. And what you ended up doing is creating the perfect reverse psychology, because I don't want you to do astrology right now and talk about Uranus and retrograde and Neptune, but the idea that everyone has been interested in being alternative, even to the point that MTV had alternative pop music, should tell you all you need to know about that kind of demographic, right? We're all victims or members of the alternative pop demographic, and that's what Trump represents. Trump represents the antithesis of the mainstream, which is the mainstream, because there's less freaking people in the mainstream today. How many putzes do you know who would be your average normie? No one wants to be a normie anymore. 50, 60, 70 years ago, everyone was hoping to be a normie. All the first generation immigrants were trying to normalize. Today, I want to be special. Well, if you all want to be special at the same time, look what you've done to yourself. Okay, was China with Ethiopian Vorhat? What's this about?
So what China plans for Ethiopia, what they are showing here is a series of documentations and footage they collected over the years. I believe, this is even related to the lockdown period, where it's completely insane to me. Even somewhere in Africa, they force these poor individuals to run around with masks at some point.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of insightful, kind of hilarious, kind of sad, because you have basically these Chinese contractors or factory operators. And at one point, she's talking to the employees and saying, look, you produce 3,000 jeans a day. That's not enough. I want you to produce 5,000. And the workers say, well, we like you. Why don't you just give us a raise, because living costs are rising and it's almost like a slave wage job. And then the translator says, or somebody says, well, maybe if it's not 5,000, he's asking the Chinese operator, could you maybe do 4,500? And she just says, no, And also, by the way, when you go to the toilet, you're taking much too long. When you're going outside to fetch some water, you're taking much too long time, So it's like, oh my God. Yeah. Sad story. On the one hand, of course, it'd be great to do technology transfers, machinery, and all of that. That's all very positive. However, as long as ultimately the companies still are owned by foreigners who maybe don't exactly care about all the social, environmental, and so on and so forth issues, then it's just another scam like this Axie thing we showed, or any MLM or whatever, where they promise great things and then nothing's really happening. Although here, the documentary also shows that it seems that the negotiations, at least with this local government, take years and years and years. The farmers that were promised other land or payouts is delayed and things like that, where I'm always wondering, like, if you already do that, couldn't you fund it and structure it properly? You really want to tell me you wouldn't have enough money or resources to do this in a way that really everyone benefits? Like they always say, it's a win-win-win. Of course, you can make a win-win-win if you really, really want to. And it's also kind of interesting because this Chinese lady who's like the liaison and operator, even she's going insane and desperate. Like, oh, I've spent years now here in this country. I don't want to be here. It's so hard to negotiate with the government. And yeah, so not sure if everyone truly gets more happiness out of this project.
Chinese companies, labor and Ethiopia. It's almost as bad as America now. You know, it's almost as bad as Amazon. What can we say? It's getting worse and worse for them. There was a time. There was a time. So Liberland, libertarian micronation.
Yeah, this is interesting spot somewhere between Croatia and Serbia. Seems very interesting. However, at least after watching this documentary and from whatever else I know, it seems this is just some sort of scam where they claim they will create a new state and then you have a European Union passport and all of that. But it is literally just a small strip of disputed land between, I believe, Croatia and Serbia, I want to say, like some riverbank. And even
Here,
the
right here.
supposed
So,
president is banned from entering that
Bosnia,
that land.
Slovenia. It's between Bosnia, Slovenia, and Serbia. Really, it's between Slovenia. It's north of Bosnia and Herzegovina. So here's Serbia, and then here's Slovenia. Oh, actually, no. It is. It's Croatia. Wow. So it's just above Bosnia, between Croatia and Serbia, right there. That's cool.
And, you know, going to Dubai and other places, promising people, oh, just invest your 10K
But look at their
here
flag.
and you will have a
Tartarian
European
flag.
passport. Oh, yeah. It's nice. But as so often, it seems there's many promises, money being siphoned off. They claim they will have a super lean government and all of these things, but it doesn't necessarily look like that's what's really going to happen. They have some really big investors. One of the guys has one of the biggest crypto hedge funds and things like that. But yeah, I wouldn't trust it, unfortunately, and it may well be just a way to siphon off money, again, of desperate people that are looking for a European Union passport or something like that.
They're not saying in the EU, are they? Is it
No, they're not recognized by anybody. That's the issue. You know, they have
we should
zero
go
legal
there.
recognition.
Actually, it seems pretty great because you could go there without having to worry about being in the EU. I mean, this seems like a fun place to visit. Actually, I'd love to check it out. It seems like fun.
You are in the EU because technically this area of land is, I guess, Croatian or Bosnian or something like that. And again, even the president of the supposed country is banned from entering his own supposed country. So it's more like a figment of the imagination. And I'm not even discounting that people should think in this way. People should build their own structures and all of that. Just in this particular case, it very much just looks like a scam, basically.
Croatian authorities have frequently blocked access to the area since the beginning of 2015. Croatian police detained Sven Sambunjak after making an attempt to cross the border. He appealed the verdict. He claimed that there was at least 3 Liberland citizens inside the area who came from Switzerland. He was detained again, and journalists from the Serbians detained. Okay, it looks like generally you can get there, just not through Croatia. I don't know for sure, but they stop people that are trying to go into the area. But I mean, it looks like there's businesses there, there's people there.
No, you can get there, but there's nothing there. Not really. There's even like some tents or whatever. And then here on the one hand, you have the high-level individuals doing these super fancy things in Abu Dhabi or Dubai or whatever.
Oh, it's in Dubai. That's all this footage is in Dubai where they're trying to market this idea.
Yeah, not something I'd want to invest in.
Fair enough. All right, so let's do a couple more, but then I have to do the next to set up for the sync tank.
No, we can close it out. Let me see if there's, or we can just continue next time. It's all right.
Is there anything you want to get like one more subject in, or we can do part 3 later this week?
Yeah, we can do part 3 later. Maybe just go to Ferienparadies Kroatien because it also relates to Croatia. The last link, you just had it on gray. Yes.
This one? No, I missed it.
This is just about how NGOs siphon off your money. And this is about Croatia recently entering the European Union and now maybe even be pricier than Northern Italy, which many people from Austria and Germany also like to visit. And we had the fun experience a few years back. We were at this restaurant and I was ordering a salad for like 7 or 8 euros. And they literally gave me like half a tomato and like 30 grams of mozzarella cheese. And we complained to the staff and was like, you're going a little bit insane with these prices. So yeah, and of course, always people trying to find the pristine spot and original spot. But of course, if there's more and more investors looking for that, the pristine, original, antique-looking spot will not look so original, pristine, and antique and untouched anymore once you have all these investors coming in. it's an interesting situation. Yeah, like this lady looking for a nice house, of course, should be on the beachfront and so on. So this is now a high value or a priority target for certain investors, and the prices are going insane.
God. What's up? We just need another war. Luckily that's not too far off. But yeah, Croatia was pretty based, and now it just thinks it's some sort of pretentious Italy wannabe state, which is super sad because we're so much cooler than Italy. Oh well. Look at us. We think we can just charge tourists for pasta like $30 a plate and that everything will be fine. This is exactly how people end up dying off. I don't know. Also, the stone houses. This is our architecture, by the way. Just giant rocks everywhere that we think are, signs of sort of Slavic anti-bourgeoisie primacy of, primitivism. Well, okay. This is part 2. We're going to do part 3 in a few days. Sorry we were a little late getting back to you. It's because Raph and I had we did the David Icke thing, and then I got back from Vienna, but we're going to have part 3 going soon, hopefully later this week. Maybe we can do it Thursday or Friday if you want to. That would be cool.
We will find a way. Thank you so much, everyone, for watching. If you like the show, check out the links below. You can support the show. You can also enjoy the next show coming up with Andreas right now, which is 8 p.m.
Think Tank with Lev Polikov from Break the Rules. Let me pull up his face there. You might have seen him, you might not have. He's pretty great. He's a Russian American, born in Russia and the Soviet Union, raised in the United States for the most part. He's done some fantastic interviews with everything from United Nations folks to Mossad agents, and I like him a lot. So I think that'll be fun. He's going to ask questions about classical liberalism and whether or not it can survive in its current state. And we'll talk about that. Base Kothar sending us 10. Thank you so much. It's super useful. We really appreciate your support, everybody. And we'll get back to you with another show very soon, a few days from now.
Thanks, everyone, and catch you all next time.
And thanks, Raph. He's the best, isn't he?